Good afternoon, a very warm welcome to Wollongong for the Men's Elite Individual Time Trial. He's going to defend his title. What is going on behind? Yeah! Who's going to take it on the finish line? Well, for the next week, we're going to be here in Wollongong, about an hour south of Sydney, in Illawarra, in New South Wales, for the UCI Road World Championships. This afternoon, the riders lining up on the start ramp for the Men's Elite Individual Time Trial. We're going to take the riders on the same course as the women's race. 34.2 kilometres of racing to decide where the rainbow bands are going to go. The first rider will be rolling down the start ramp very shortly at 1:42 in the afternoon. It's now very sunny, 22 degrees. The wind keeps changing. It's currently 17 kilometres an hour. And the crowd getting ready to welcome the first of the riders onto the start ramp. The first rider to go will be Daniel Bonello, who will be rolling down at 13:42 in the afternoon. We look out over Sydney with the magnificent Harbour Bridge in the background and, of course, the Opera House in the foreground. Just not too far away from where these world titles are being held. Wollongong with its magnificent beaches, a great setting, and now a UCI Bike City, having been given that designation ahead of these World Championships. The UCI Road World Championships, one of New South Wales' 10 World Cups in 10 years strategy, others including the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup, the FIFA Women's World Cup and the 2027 Netball World Cup, as well as the Rugby World Cup. There's a reminder of the previous winners, the last two winners. Filippo Ganna, he took 2020 and 2021, and before that was Rowan Dennis with 2 victories back-to-back. Can Ganna take its hat-trick this afternoon here in Wollongong? Let's take a look back at last year. I look back on Flanders, which was the 100th anniversary of the UCI Road World Championships. 52 riders expected to take to the race start in a number of waves, 4 waves of riders to decide this world title. The riders taking on 2 laps of the course. And it's a technical but very, very fast course that the riders will encounter during this World Championship. First run in 1994, the first winner was Chris Boardman. Let's take a look at the circuit. 34.2 kilometres, but 2 laps of the course to decide the title. We start off in Marine Drive before we head into the city itself. We've got the climb, which will have the intermediate split on it. After we've gone through the city centre, we head to Mount Ousley, down to Ferry Meadow, north to the coast, and back down to the city beach. 312 metres of elevation on this course. Well, the riders are getting their bikes checked, getting everything organised. We're about to see the first rider, Daniel Bonello, roll down this start ramp. He's just about to get started. There's the jig, which is used to make sure that all the bikes comply with the rules and regulations of racing. All these bikes need to be checked by the commissaires before any rider is allowed to take to the start and get themselves onto the course. The crowd is growing though. Here in Wollongong, we're ready for the first rider. Welcome along, I'm Anthony McCross, and alongside me is a rider who has finished, of course, on the podium of the World Championships in the road race in 2014 in Ponferrada, and well known as a yellow jersey of the Tour de France and a Monument Classics winner, as we just see the UCI Commissaires panel. A very good afternoon, Simon Gerrans.
Good afternoon, Anthony. So good to be here in Wollongong, World Championships on home ground for the Aussies. It's going to be a great day of racing.
You've been watching the racing this morning, so a good start for the Aussies with Grace Brown. That was pretty spectacular. That
was a spectacular ride by Grace Brown. She spent the last few hours in the hot seat, waiting there for the final rider to complete the course, obviously finishing in a really credible second position. So really pleased for Grace Brown, and it really sets the tone for the championships to come.
It does set the tone for the championships. She's been in a hot seat all afternoon. Our seats have now got pretty hot. This morning it was quite chilly here in Wollongong, but now the sun's come out. I feel like I'm now in Australia.
We're definitely in the hot seat, so we're facing west, so we're facing this afternoon sun, and the temperatures are picking up, but the wind has remained stable. So the wind is blowing in a westerly direction today, so it's blowing offshore, and so basically the riders are going to have a fairly steady 20-kilometre-hour wind from the west. So that's going to make it quite challenging because there are a lot of corners in this course. I managed to follow one of the women racing earlier today, so I did a lap around the course in a follow car, and you could really feel the wind was blowing quite strong on a lot of the climbs, so really heading towards inland. But then as they turned across the top of those climbs, heading back down towards the coast, a strong tailwind, so some really fast sections as well.
We're just about to see this first rider on the start line. He's going to roll down in around a minute and a half. The rider's going at 1.5 minute intervals. We've got all these different waves of riders as well. The wind should be pretty steady all afternoon. Yet during a women's race, it looked like it changed from 24 kilometres an hour. At one point it was 12, then it went to 18. But this afternoon for the men should be a bit more stable where we are.
It should be quite consistent for the duration of the men's race. Quite often in the evening, the wind may drop off a little bit. So for the late starters, they might have the benefit of a little less wind for a short period of time. But I imagine it's going to be fairly consistent throughout the day.
Having seen the way that the women rode and the characteristics of our podium, did that give you any background, any indication of how this race might go this afternoon?
It's always good to see the earlier races, and it does set the tone for the upcoming races, the upcoming time trials in particular. So it does give you a bit of indication of what sort of rider the course will suit, and it's really interesting breaking down today. There's 4 waves of riders going off, and identify that a couple of really exciting riders in each wave. In the first wave of riders, the 4th rider down the start ramp in Luke Platt. Local rider, I'm really excited to see what he can do in this individual time trial, and I think we can expect to see Luke Platt in the hot seat for a large part of today's race.
Could be another Grace Brown situation this afternoon with Luke Platt. We look down on this start ramp, looking out over Wollongong, which is looking absolutely spectacular in the afternoon sun. The first rider is being introduced. Onto the line, here we go. This is our first rider. This is Daniel Bonello from Malta. One of two riders who will be starting from Malta. The second one will be going in about an hour's time, Alexander Smith. But a pretty special moment for a rider to open up the time trial.
Well, particularly special for Daniel Bonello, because he's actually a local-born Maltese rider, growing up here in Australia from just down the road. I understand from the Highlands, not too far from here. So what an honour it is for Bonello to be rolling down the start ramp, the first off the rank.
And the two Maltese riders are local riders, aren't they, in this field?
That's right. So it's Alex Fife. He's leading the second wave off. And obviously Bonello rolling down the start ramp any moment now.
Today, and wow, we have some specialists.
Well, there's the jig. Again, now changed, so it's a little bit more of a laser measurement jig, so it can just check the riders are perfect in terms of position on those. They've got to comply with the regulations, which have been changed a little bit recently, so some riders will have had to make sure they comply with all of those. Daniel Bonello then in front of what is a home crowd.
I imagine he's going to have a lot of friends and family support today.
Underway for the first rider of 52 in this Men's Elite World Championship individual time trial, 34.2 kilometres the riders face. We've got two intermediate splits along the way, one after just over 7 kilometres, the one on the second time up the climb. Getting into time trial modes, sometimes the riders like to just ease themselves into this, but it looks like in the women's race you couldn't really do that. You needed to be on it right from the start.
You absolutely have to be on it right from the start. And this 34-kilometre time trial for the men is actually quite a short time trial, so they know they have to get up to race speed as quickly as they can. They cannot afford whatsoever to settle in and ease into a rhythm. They actually need to hit their peak numbers right from the opening kilometres.
Settling into the rhythm then, Daniel Bonello. Luke Clapp is starting so early, the fourth rider to go, and having seen Grace Brown already take a medal, surely he's going to be super motivated. Do we know whether he's recovered from La Vuelta? Because we saw him on the final stage of La Vuelta. We'll just see Vitaly Novoskovsky go off the start ramp here, riding for Ukraine. Vitaly Novoskovsky gets going away now for the Ukraine. In the blue and yellow, those traditional colours that we are used to. Decided not to ride with the long sleeves on that skin suit. As we go back here with Daniel Bonello of Malta. So Luke, coming back to Luke Clapp then. We saw him last weekend, you know, 1 week ago in La Vuelta, looking like he was coming out of La Vuelta in really, really good form as we fly over the beaches here in Wollongong.
Yeah, that's right. So Luke Clapp has just finished his first Grand Tour. It's his first season professional racing with the Ineos Grenadiers team. So he did a lot of work in the recent Vuelta a España, and we saw him on the attack in the final stage. So it was really good to see him with the energy still to go on the attack in the third week of the race. And he looked like he was just testing his time trial legs just a little bit, because he was pushing a lot of wind there and putting in some long efforts. But having caught up with Luke during the week over the phone, he said he's struggling to recover a bit. He still feels a lot of fatigue from his first Grand Tour, which is completely normal. But I imagine, like you said, he will be extra motivated, rolling down the start ramp in the first wave, and obviously seeing the performance of Grace Brown earlier today.
This is our next rider, riding for Hong Kong, China. This is Eun Sun Lee. Underway for the rider from Hong Kong, China. Third rider to take to the start.
Well, good luck to the Hong Kong rider.
Steady start for this rider. 34 kilometres, 22 years of age. And we can start to feel the expectation now as the Australian Road Champion Luke Platt riding for Ineos Grenadiers gets himself ready, gets himself up there on that start ramp.
That's right, Luke is the current Australian Road Champion. He was the Australian Time Trial Champion last year as well, so he's had a good track record at the Australian Championships over the past couple of seasons. But having completed his first year in the World Tour, so his first year racing at the highest level of the sport, rounding out his season here in Australia with the World Championships, this is all or nothing for Luke Platt.
In the colours of Australia, I do like the design on this Australian kit for these World Championships. There he is, already about to roll down the ramp in front of a home crowd. A very special moment for this Australian rider. Let's see whether the legs have recovered. He's just got to give it everything this afternoon, see whether he can get himself into the hot seat. The expectation would be that in this first wave of riders, he should be the fastest rider, but that's not what this is about. This is about being the fastest rider when we get to something around 5 o'clock this afternoon. Platt is underway.
That's right, Anthony. You can see it's extremely aggressive start there by Luke Platt. He is blasted down the start ramp into this fast right-hand corner to get the race underway. And this is a really technical circuit. There is no less than 15 corners on this 17K lap. So it's a course where it's hard to find your rhythm. You have to really be powerful between each of the corners. You have to explode out of every corner, get your speed back up as high as possible.
Where are the points on the course from what you've seen where you can gain some time on your rivals?
Well, what it comes down to on a parkour like this one, if you are technically very good on your bike, you have a big advantage over your rivals. It's all about holding a high speed through the corners. The higher your speed through the corners, the less you have to accelerate using precious energy on the exit of the corners. So being a technical circuit, it's going to really favour the good bike handlers. There's also a possibility to make up some time on this short climb as well. It's mid-course.
Luke Platt settling in this first phase of this time trial. If he rides like he did last weekend on the final day of La Vuelta, then we could see a really stunning performance. This is the Canadian, Matteo Daltin, about to go off the start. All the riders going at 1.5 minute intervals. Gets himself started. Goes off a little bit more calmly than we saw Luke Platt. A rider who rides for a local Canadian team rather than being in any of the World Tour squads or anything like that. So he makes his way off the start, and Canada will be watching to find out how he does. Luke Platt then, in the early stages of this ride, 2 minutes in, as he's told you that he still feels tired. A week after a Grand Tour, of course, everyone is different, but the physiology of him will be very different to how it was a month ago now, I guess.
Yeah, most definitely. So Grand Tours are a huge part of the development for younger professional riders because it's their first really big block of 3-week racing. So it's completely normal that Luke Platt will still feel tired from the recent Vuelta a España, but he should be much stronger. And you can see he's riding quite a small gear at this period of time, but I imagine Luke will find he'll be start to riding and pushing a much bigger gear than what he's done previously.
Makes his way through that fast turn.
Now, looking at Luke Platt there just a moment ago, you can see how efficient his position is. He is has such a flat back. He managed to get his head down really low, saying extremely aerodynamic.
We're back now on the course with Daniel Bonello fighting his way through some of the corners here, isn't he? Just trying to stay nice and quick. But you can see the way he's losing time in the corners compared to Luke Platt, the way he's just gliding his way through.
Yeah, again, well, Luke Platt, again, time trial specialist, and he spent a lot of time in the track program as well, particularly in the team's pursuit squad. So he has such great experience of just being tucked down in that aerodynamic position, so he's really comfortable there, and he's going to be really good at handling his bike also in that aerodynamic position.
Our first intermediate time split will be just over 7 kilometres, and that's where we'll get an idea of how all these riders compare this afternoon. This is the warm-up area. where the riders are able to just go through the final phases of their warm-up. The riders will have done a warm-up before this, won't they? And then they'll come into this area as kind of a holding area.
Kind of a holding pen. No, that's right, Anthony. The riders will have a very specific warm-up for their time trial, and it's really individual. Each rider has their own specific protocol that they like to follow warming up for an individual time trial like this one. So imagine they would have gone out on the road this morning, done a nice steady warm-up, and then it'd be a lot more specific as they near their start.
The start then of the next rider. This is Bolivar Espinosa of Panama. He gets going, Panama rider. Big crowd now building in the start and finish area. It's been building all afternoon, hasn't it? We've got so much going on in Wollongong over the coming days, all the light shows and the concerts that are going on. It's going to be a real focal point of sport over the coming week of all of these races.
Yeah, most definitely. Most days there are events on here in Wollongong throughout the next week. Obviously building towards the road races next weekend, but already yesterday when we arrived here in Wollongong, you could see there was already a big crowd gathering. Obviously very excited about the racing getting underway today.
We're getting close then to the first of our intermediate splits. And we're up here on Dumfries Avenue. This is intermediate split number 1. Takes us up to the top of Mount Ousley. What is this climb like how it works and develops in its various phases, and how will a rider ride it?
Well, it's quite a short climb, and the riders don't hit it with a huge amount of speed, so they'll really have to attack the bottom of the climb quite quickly, and they'll be able to punch over the top there. You can see Cornello there, he's going over the crest of the climb, clocking that first intermediate time check just shy of 10 minutes. But now we're back on board with Luke Platt. You see him taking a nice fast line through that corner, cutting the apex of the corner and going right to the edge of the road through the exit.
The other thing that Luke Platt will be so fresh from is riding a race like La Vuelta, where you are in a huge peloton. The speed of La Vuelta over the last 3 weeks was really exceptionally high, so he won't be worrying too much about the twists and turns riding on his own, will he? Because he'll just be feeling like he's really on his game right now.
Well, he'll have nobody in his way, that's for sure, compared to riding in the peloton of the Vuelta a España. But Luke Platt, he would have done a lot of reconnaissance of this course, not necessarily on his bike, but I imagine the Australian cycling team would have had a lot of video analysis of the parkour as well, so he would have really studied that, and then he had the opportunity to ride the course on a couple of occasions beforehand just to get used to how the course feels. So there was a period of time yesterday where the course was closed for traffic, that he would have ridden 2 or 3 laps, and again this morning on his warm-up ride he also would have been on the parkour as well, I imagine.
The next rider about to start, this is the Italian Edoardo Affini. Very strong rider from Italy, rides for the Jumbo-Visma team. And he's the last rider in this wave of riders, and we've got a total of 4 waves for the riders to be fitted into. Edoardo Affini underway for Italy. This is the smallest wave. The other waves are much larger. 9 riders in this particular group. And Affini gets underway. Normally they say that riders like to cover as much of themselves with the skin suit, but we're seeing more and more riders riding with short sleeves.
Yeah, that's interesting. We're seeing some riders riding with short sleeves, because you're right, the more of your skin that is covered up with an aerodynamic material, the faster that is. So we see Affini here, and he's sort of long, short sleeves on his jersey, if that makes sense. They go down to around his elbow, so his forearms are still quite exposed. But Affini here, I'm looking forward to seeing what sort of time he can do earlier on in today's individual time trial. He was recently participating also in the Vuelta a España with his Jumbo-Visma squad, but he abandoned quite early on in the Vuelta. Don't recall that was a COVID. Is that a COVID positive he had? So hopefully he's recovered from the Vuelta a España, the efforts there, and a short bout of COVID before coming here to Wollongong.
This is Flagstaff Point Lighthouse, built in 1937. It's one of the key points on the course. As we see the riders here, Luke Platt driving his way up this climb. And the time to beat, 9 minutes 58.94. Luke Plapp is almost at the top of this climb already. And look at the way that he is driving his way over the top of that little rise. Made short work of that.
He certainly made short work of that, and he's gone through that first intermediate time check 53 seconds faster than Bonello.
So 9 minutes 5.21 for Luke Plapp. 47.5 kilometres an hour from the start, straight up that climb.
He's not mucking around, is he?
It's not, is he?
No, he has had an extremely fast first time check by the looks of it. Obviously, the big favourites are really still to come in this individual time trial. You can see Luke Plapp there. He's wasted no time in getting up to speed whatsoever. And for me, then the other big favourite in this first wave of riders is the rider on screen now, Eduardo Affini.
Affini is a strong time trialist. He's renowned for his ability against the watch. Do you think Luke Plapp has a realistic opportunity of taking a medal here? When you look at the riders who come towards the end of the field, we've got Ganna, Venepol, Pogacar, Stefan Kung, Bauke Mollema, Ethan Hayter and others. But he looks like, you know, the morale of being in Australia on home roads, a crowd behind you, Australian road champion, that can mean you can perform differently.
Well, I think for Luke Plapp, who is an extremely motivated guy, he'll be even extra motivated racing these home world championships. It's so rare in a rider's career that you have the opportunity to race worlds on home ground. So Luke Plapp, he'll be out there, and like you say, he's not lacking motivation at all. He's gone out there really hard today. But as far as, is he a genuine contender for this title? I think a great place for Luke Plapp. If he could finish on the podium, that would be fantastic. But it looks as though the Australian cycling team have taken a bit of a gamble with Plapp. They haven't sent him out with the big favourites. They've sent him out early on in the day, hoping for more favourable conditions for Plapp, because he won't need much to really move him into that big tier of favourites.
How do the countries decide where their riders are? Because we've got this wave, all the different waves. So do the jury decide where your country's going to go, and then you slot your riders in, or is it completely random?
I think the race organisation likes to have the major contenders, the big favourites, in the final wave of riders to really build the anticipation throughout the day. However, if you have a bit of an outside favourite or not a real major contender, I think it's really more up to the nations where they choose to place their riders.
Luke Plapp. Well, he's gone through that intermediate time split. He's made that ride to 7.2 kilometres seem pretty short, and a lot shorter than 7.2k. He's using every single little bit of road that he can use to find the way to glide through these various twists and turns of the course. Back with Affini. He looks like totally different in his riding style, doesn't he? Much more calm on a bike. And looks like he's going slower, but really isn't.
I'm sure he's not going slow at all. You can see Affini there, again, a very aerodynamic position. You can see how low his shoulders are. So his shoulders are down lower than the lower part of his back. You'll also see him dropping his head down every once in a while, looking towards the ground, because once again, that's going to make him more aerodynamic than when he's actually looking up to seeing where he's going. So he's constantly looking up just to survey the road ahead and then dropping his head back down again to get aerodynamic.
Heading out along the coastline here in Illawarra in New South Wales. A spectacular coastline if you're ever in this region. Wollongong, which traditionally was all about industry, not so much now, as more about tourism and the development of innovation around this particular region. Back here with Luke Plapp. Doesn't look like he's carrying a bottle on that bike this afternoon. Just trying to see whether that is the case.
I didn't notice whether he had a bottle on his bike, but I would be surprised if he didn't have a bottle of some descriptions for a 34-kilometre time trial. Often these days the riders have an aerodynamic shaped bottle that really slots within their frame. But you're right, Anthony, it doesn't look like he has a bit on his bike, so he's taking on this 34-kilometre time trial, which I expect will take him, you know, around 40 minutes, if not less. So the temperatures aren't overly high, so Luke's anticipating that he's going to be able to get through this time trial without the need of a drink.
Sometimes the riders put a bottle up their jersey or short, don't know, a little one, but this time he looks like he's just going to ride around the course, gliding his way through the corners, even on the aero skis, not even taking his hands off those middle handlebars.
No, once again, the fact that he would have studied this parkour and he's very comfortable in that aerodynamic position, he will know what corners that he needs to sit up and use his brakes to get through the corner. He's going to know what corners he's basically able to take at full speed.
Nice shot of the birds there. There's a lot of worry about magpie attacks in this particular time trial.
Maybe by yourself.
Remco Evenepoel is really worried about it. DJ Bonello then heading towards the end of the first lap. 19 minutes gone by for the Maltese rider as he maintains this momentum. This local rider producing a good performance this afternoon in this World Championship. As we look out over the marina, don't forget, follow at UCI_cycling, and UCI.org is where you can get information about the Road World Championships. And you can also take a look at Wollongong 2022 on the internet. That's where you can get all the detail about what's going on in Wollongong over the coming days, the programme of events. This is back with Eduardo Affini. Over the last few years, we've got very used to the Sunday of the World Championships being the team time trial. It's the first time we've seen that both the men's and the women's time trial held on the same day, exactly the same distance, on exactly the same course. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's fantastic that we're opening with what is one of the biggest and most important events of the World Championship week, being the individual time trials, and kicking off with the elite races. It's also good to see the men and the women racing across the same parkour, but whether they should be racing over equal distance, this is extending into a little bit of a longer time trial maybe than what the women are mostly used to, but it's a shorter time trial for the men. So it's really making it a test of endurance for the women, and we saw that really play out in the results of the women's race. And the men, they obviously have to start so aggressively here.
Affini is coming up to this intermediate time split. Luke Plapp has the fastest time at this point, and the Italian rider is looking to try and eclipse that time, which he does by 2.11 seconds, 47.7 kilometers an hour to that point. Affini, like we mentioned earlier, the speed he's got on the bike belies how it looks right now.
Yeah, Affini, they're extremely smooth on his bike. You can see him rolling a bigger gear, not rocking and rolling too much, versus Plapp, who's riding looks like a slightly smaller gear than Affini, and really attacking the corners.
Having spoken to any of the riders, do you think they'll ride more of a negative split and get into it, or it's just got to be, as you've been mentioning, flat out all the way, just try and hold on to the finish line?
I think in a short time trial like this one, they'll just have to attack it as hard as they can and then try and hold on all the way to the finish line. I don't think they can expect to ride a negative split, so really warm into it or warm into their ride or find their rhythm throughout. They really have to hit their fastest speeds right from the first lap.
Luke Plapp settling into the rhythm. We heard from Ellen van Dijk earlier about the fact that she didn't even have any time checks during her whole time trial. She didn't want to know what was going on. But most of the male riders, because they're so used to having radios, would anticipate having time checks and knowing what riders are doing, would they? Yeah,
that's right. So normally in a time trial, the riders would have radio communication with the car that's following them. So they'll have a sports director in the car that's following them, give them constant updates of their splits. They won't need to give them so much course information because it's a one-day race. All these riders will be very familiar with the parkour. They've all had the opportunity to ride it beforehand, but it's just basically giving those little updates with your times and that little bit of extra motivation as well. Some riders like to hear through their race radios.
As is the World Championships as well, from your experience, following in the cars would be the national coaches or some team directors from squads?
Well, often they're one and the same. Often you do get team directors from squads who double up as their national coach as well. So often riders will have their national coach in the team car. They might like to have their trainer as well, so their personal coach in the squad. There's always a mechanic in the team car following them as well in case they have any mechanical mishaps. They need to a bike change or they get a flat tyre. So that follow car, particularly for the big favourites, it's generally pretty full.
We're getting some breathtaking scenery on this individual time trial this afternoon. Our next wave of riders will start in about 20 minutes time, and that includes the likes of Nilsson Paulus, João Almeida, Yves Lampert, Stefan Bissiger, Magnus Cort and Mateo Sobrero.
And let's not forget Alex Smythe.
And Alex Smythe as well. Very important. He's going as the first rider. Should have mentioned him because he's the first rider off the start line in that second wave of riders. Rider from Malta, but a local rider again, coming from quite close to here. Luke Platt
heading up towards the finish line to complete the first lap.
He makes his way up to Marine Drive. Getting a great reception here, the Australian road champion, as he makes his way across the finish line to complete lap number 1. Luke Platt goes flying past us here in the commentary position, goes right to the left-hand side of the road, ducks it over to the right-hand side, and goes flying his way out towards the second of our intermediate time splits.
Well, once again, we just witnessed how confident Luke Platt is on his time trial bike. He took that fast right-hand corner, didn't take his hands away from that aerodynamic position at all. He backed off ever so slightly, lent his bike through the corner and accelerated out the other side, always in that fast position.
These riders will train for hours on these time trial bikes to get this sort of position and go into the wind tunnel and try and develop the best possible aero position they can find.
That's right, Anthony. There's a number of ways to develop a really good aerodynamic position, and one of them definitely is testing in a wind tunnel. But equally as important to an aerodynamic position is being in a powerful position as well. So you can get extremely aerodynamic, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to put out big power. So what a lot of riders also do, and a lot of teams invest a lot of time and resources into this, is testing on a track. So in a stable environment where they can also measure the rider's speed and power output while sitting in that aerodynamic position.
Yeah, well, we are back in the area behind the scenes with the riders just warming up on these Wahoo trainers. Just keeping the legs turned over, just getting themselves focused and ready. The last little bits of nutrition being taken on board.
So up until this point, the riders would have gone through a really specific warm-up protocol, but now with only a few minutes before their start time, they are just trying to stay warm. They're just trying to keep their legs moving in anticipation for that fast start.
Generally on a day like today, if you take someone like Luke Platt, for example, what would his day have really looked like in order to make sure he gets on the start line, he's eaten and drinking enough before the race, that his warm-up is right? How would it look, and then how does he control that? Does someone control it for him, or in a World Championship, is he responsible for doing it?
Well, he would definitely have a lot of advice from his coaches and team personnel about his preparation, but ultimately Luke Platt, he's only a young rider, but he's gaining quite a lot of experience in individual time trialing, so he'll be refining that warm-up protocol or that process right up until his start time. So as soon as he was given his start time for today's individual time trial, he'll then start to work backwards right up until when he gets out of bed first thing in the morning, because everything works back from that start time, from when he warms up to when he eats, to how much he's eating, how much he's drinking, how long he's warming up for. It all works up until that time when he rolls down the start ramp. So it'll be a very structured day for Luke Platt leading into his start today.
And how long would his warm-up be? Would that just be the recce around the course, or does that include some warm-up time on the trainers and that sort of thing?
Well, he would have definitely been out in the course this morning, I would imagine, to do one last final reconnaissance ride of the course. But then he would have been doing a small pre-start, so maybe on the trainer this morning before breakfast. And then he'll have a very structured warm-up protocol in the final hour before his start time. So that whole process, it really does take all morning, and it is very specific to Luke himself. And it's really going to depend as well on his feelings. If he is feeling really tired and lethargic from the Vuelta a España that finished only a week ago, he might want to shorten his warm-up a little bit. If he feels like he needs to really get his legs moving even more so because he's carrying sort of that muscle fatigue, he might want to be out there for a little bit longer.
We're here with Daniel Bonello. Let's just give you an up-to-date time on the intermediate time splits. For those of you just joining us now, the first intermediate time split, Eduardo Affini is the fastest rider, 9 minutes 3.10. Luke Plapp at 2.11 seconds. Matteo Dalcin at 14.9. Then Yuri Natarov at 43.78 seconds. And then this rider at 55.84 seconds, Daniel Bonello, who's now just inside 12 kilometres from the conclusion of his time trial. He was the first rider to take to the start ramp here in this individual time trial. These time trial titles date back all the way to 1994. In recent times, Filippo Ganna has taken the title back-to-back in 20 and 21. And Rowan Dennis before that taking double world titles, but Ganna trying to do as much as he can to win another title.
That's right, Anthony. So Filippo Ganna, back-to-back world titles. He's won the last 2 editions. Prior to that, it was Australia's Rowan Dennis who won 2 world championships in a row. And today, the Australian rider that we get to enjoy watching out there, Luke Plapp, is on the course right now. But it is really up to Filippo Ganna. He is the out-and-out favourite for this time trial going in, trying to defend that title for the 3rd time consecutive. Once again, some fantastic shots of the Wollongong coastline. Absolute perfect temperature for today's individual time trial. The wind is blowing ever so slightly up to around 20 kilometres an hour, always from their west.
You can see Affini clicking his way through the gears, trying to find the best possible gear to ride in. The riders at the moment with the disc wheels in the back, and they've got their team equipment they've used all season. As we see them rider going through to the 1 kilometre to go point.
Yeah, Eduardo Affini there in the final kilometre of the first lap of this individual time trial. We can hear him clicking through those gears as he comes down to this fast section, slightly downhill here, really building that speed up. You can see his cadence, so the speed he's turning his legs really pick up there as well. And he'll try and carry that momentum over this little rise and around towards the finish banner.
We were talking the other day about the new gearing setups that some riders are starting to use, where they just have one chainring on the front and then they have a gearing mechanism in the gears at the back. Do you think anyone will start to use those in a time trial? Because it seems to me like you can stay in the big rig and go onto this climb, for example, and you can use the same setup and you'll save a little bit of weight.
There is a lot of different gearing options that are coming out now, and different mechanisms. And we were looking yesterday, we were talking about closely the Shimano gears, the new Durace setup, where the gears will automatically work out, or your system will automatically work out when it changes from the big chainring to the small chainring in relation to where you are on the rear cassette.
This is Daniel Bonello coming up Dumfries Avenue to the top of this climb. I would imagine the time now is going to show as the fastest time so far. Still sprinted his way to the top. Luke Clapp will be closing in on all the riders in front of him now. Still a very respectable time of 44.7 kilometres an hour for this Maltese rider. Getting into the distance down this descent now into this fast right-hand turn, leaning the bike right over into that corner. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Ghana and the other riders ride this course. Having seen on the map before we got here, everyone's saying that the corners are so technical, you're in the city, it's going to be really difficult and tricky. And then last night when we sat down and had dinner and we were talking about the course, people were telling us it's really, really quick. And now having watched the women's time trial and now seeing the men's, it is really quick. And Ghana and other riders who are technically good in the corners are going to thrive on this course, aren't they?
Yeah, this is really a course that favours the technically strong riders out there, the riders who have a lot of confidence to lean their bike over the corners and take those corners at high speed. So particularly these time trial specialists that do put in a lot of training on their time trial bike. So they are really comfortable and really confident on their bikes. Here we can see Luke Clapp out of the saddle, attacking this short, steep climb. Looking forward to seeing his time check over the summit. Starting rocking and rolling there, so he's starting to feel the fatigue of the race so far.
Luke Clapp coming up to the second of the intermediate time split, sprinting his way over the top. The time to beat is 32 minutes 54.03. Luke Clapp's time is going to be well over 2 minutes faster to this point. 2 minutes 31.87. The average speed for Luke Clapp, 48.4 kilometres an hour. Considering we've got two pretty hefty climbs on this course, that is a fast average speed.
It is an extremely fast average speed. You can see quite a steep descent off that climb. Right, Luke Clapp very quickly coming up to speed there, trying to recover through that corner. Again, dropping back down into that aerodynamic position, riding a really big gear on his bike, still being able to push a gear on that fast descent.
We're flying over the Wollongong Botanic Gardens. Very well known in this area, one of the largest rainforest collections in Australia. A beautiful place to go. Certainly one of the places to visit when you come to Wollongong if you ever get the opportunity to come here. And I know some of you like to just follow along cycling because you get the opportunity to visit so many places across the world without ever having to make your way to this particular area. But if you ever get the chance, then this is pretty spectacular. The Botanic Gardens here in Wollongong. Feeney's starting to catch the rider in front of him already. Closing in on the rider who started in front of him. He's going to go past as though he's pretty much standing still. It'll be interesting to compare the time of Luke Clapp and Eduardo Affini when they get to this second intermediate time split to see just how fast Clapp is and whether Affini's recent illness will start to have any bearing on his performance.
Well, Affini did clock the fastest time at the first intermediate time check, just a little faster, around 2 seconds faster than Luke Clapp. So looking forward to seeing what Affini's time is second time through that time check. You can see he's quite quickly caught the rider there in front of him, in and out of his slipstream, and then continuing down the left-hand side of the road.
Catches Bolivar Espinosa from Bolivia. Clapp now is 7.7 kilometres from the finish. Right on the limit as he went through that corner. Lent the bike right over, trying to carry as much speed as he could through that turn. And another fast left-hander for Luke Clapp. Near the motorbike behind, scraping across the turn as he went through, trying to get these shots and follow the rider at such high speed. Back then with the rider from Malta, Daniel Bonello. Not a rider who's going to finish in the top places overall. That's the beauty of the World Championships, isn't it? You get the opportunity of a rider from Malta riding doesn't ride anywhere near the World Tour, riding against the likes of Filippo Ganna, Remco Evenepoel, who's just won the Vuelta, the winner of the Tour de France. It must be a pretty incredible experience.
Yeah, fantastic for Bonello here, representing Malta, to test himself in this individual time trial against the very best in the world. You can really see the difference in Bonello's form and position on his bike there. You can see that as he's feeling the fatigue of this individual time trial, he's starting to sit up higher and higher, where a moment earlier we witnessed Luke Plapp still very flat, very fast, and the same with Affini.
This is the Innovation Campus in Wollongong, another new place that's developing this particular area. It's getting well known for its particular innovation. It's a powerful symbol of today's Wollongong, which is trying to be more progressive and more sustainable. It was opened in 2008. It's helped to advance the research in innovative materials, including the ability to regenerate damaged human nerves. Luke Plapp, 5.9 kilometres from the finish.
You can see there Luke Plapp deciding to take the line directly over the top of that roundabout, which has been removed. So a slight ramp up and down, but really not breaking rhythm at all.
Last Sunday, he was so close to winning that stage of the Vuelta, wasn't it? He was so impressive on the final day of a Grand Tour in which he'd suffered so much.
Yeah, Luke was looking so strong throughout the recent Vuelta a España. Had an unfortunate crash in the third week of the race. It looked like it took its toll on him a little bit. He struggled in the final few days through the mountains, but then still had the energy on the 21st and final stage of the race to go on the attack on the street circuit throughout Madrid. He went away with one other rider, only to be caught inside around the last 500 metres of the stage.
He was away with Johansson from Intermarché Wanty-Gobert. The most impressive part of it was when they were caught just before the finish and then accelerated away again, opened up another 12-second lead, and suddenly it looked like it might be doable. They might hold on to win the stage, which never happens on the final day of Grand Tour. This is Yves Lampert, the rider who was the first maillot jaune, the first yellow jersey of this year's Tour de France, surprising everybody. Haven't taken that.
It certainly was a surprise to see Yves Lampert win the opening stage of the most recent edition of the Tour de France on a very wet and rainy opening stage in Copenhagen. Yves Lampert there took a lot of risk, but he was the fastest there with the best bike handling skills to take that first yellow jersey.
We'll see whether he can do that this afternoon. This is Wollongong Art Gallery, built in the 1950s. The building was converted to a gallery in 1991. The floor plan of that building evokes the shape of a crown. It was designed to commemorate the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. Eduardo Affini clicks his way through the gears, makes his way onto the climb again. This rider looks to be travelling very well indeed. A teammate of Wout van Aert, and I'm surprised, aren't you, that Wout van Aert's chosen not to ride this individual time trial this afternoon, having finished the last 2 years in second place.
I'm quite surprised because I thought this was a parkour that really suited Wout van Aert. So that's right, Eduardo Affini riding as a teammate throughout the year of Wout van Aert in the Jumbo-Visma team. You can see nearing this second intermediate time check, really pushing his way through the line, and he's lost time on Luke Plapp. 1.67 seconds.
It started to turn then, the tables are turning. Plapp has held a little bit back. Affini over the top. It was just over 2 seconds in the first split, now it's gone the other way. So Plapp's clearly travelling a little bit quicker than Affini now, starting to open up a bit of an advantage on the Italian. So it could be we've got an Australian in the hot seat at the end of this first wave of riders. There's the difference, 1.76. Once you go over the top of this climb, pretty much downhill back to the seaside, isn't it? And then you've got rolling roads into the finish line.
Well, the top of the climb is the highest point on the parkour, but it's not exactly simple from then on. There are a lot of corners, a couple of little rises. It's not downhill all the way to the finish line, but it is mostly downhill. The fastest section of the course is the second half.
Thanks very much for joining us. This is the UCI Road World Championships as we wait for the arrival of our first rider to the line, Daniele Bonello. 1 kilometre to go for the Maltese rider. And the intermediate time splits. Let's just update you on what's been happening out there on the roads. Still, we've got Luke Platt, the fastest rider through the second split. Eduardo Affini, 1.76 seconds down. Matteo Dalcin is in third place, 34.67 seconds down. Through the first split, Affini is still the fastest rider. He's 2.11 seconds ahead of Luke Platt. This is the arrival of the first rider. He's going to set the standard for all the other riders to beat. But then not too far behind will be the Australian. And Platt will then be making his way, by the looks of things, into the hot seat for all the other riders to target at. Bonello has ridden a good time trial this afternoon. He's going to complete the 34.2 kilometres of racing. And the Maltese rider, although homegrown in Australia, 44.57.14, a respectable 45.6 kilometres an hour.
First ride at the start and the first ride at the finish. Bonello there, crossing the line. As you said, Anthony, very respectable, 45 kilometre an hour average speed.
Luke Platt, meanwhile, is absolutely flying his way towards the finish line. This is impressive from this young rider. Look at the way he's taken these corners. He's going to be significantly faster than Bonello. He's going to set the standard for everyone else to beat as he comes powering his way into the finish line. Luke Platt of Australia is going to set the standard for everyone else this afternoon to try and beat. It's been an accomplished time trial. At the first intermediate split, he was slightly down. At the finish line, he goes top. An average speed, Simon, of 49.5 kilometres an hour. That's pretty rapid.
Well, if Bonello's time was respectable, that time is outstanding. 49.5 kilometres an hour average speed over that very technical course. He's left it all out there today.
When we looked at the course the last 24 hours and thought about it, did anyone think that the riders would average 50k an hour? Or the winners would average 50k an hour? Because of the twists and turns and the corners.
Well, that's what we discussed yesterday evening. We thought that would be around the average speed, but then when I saw the parkour firsthand this morning and how technical it is, I'm actually quite surprised to see the average speed so high.
Luke Platt has set the standard of 49.5 kilometres an hour. There is a real trade-off, I guess, and that is that there are so many twists and turns, so many corners, that you can either ride safely through 49.5 kilometres an hour, or you could be right on the limit and overcook it as well. Here's our next rider, about to take to the start line. This is the rider from China, Chu Changhuang.
The rider from China here really sprinting down the start ramp. Very fast start before this right corner. You can see he's backed off too much through that corner, already pedaling again through the apex of the corner to a fast start, but obviously hasn't taken too close a look at that first corner to realise how open it is on the exit.
So the idea is you go into the corner and you carry speed out, as opposed to doing what he just did, which is pulling the brakes on, going into the corner more slowly, and then having to pick the speed right back up again.
That's right, Anthony. The more you slow down going into the corner or to get through the apex of the corner, the bigger effort you have to put in to really accelerate out of the corner as well. So you lose speed through the corner, and then you have to spend more energy on the exit.
Affini is not too far away from the finish line, 4,400 metres for the Italian. Already started is Alex Smythe of Malta. Just following him was Chu Changquan. Coming up shortly, Nikias Arndt of Germany, Nielsen Paulus also. It's our next rider, Edouard Ongarang. About to get going. Rider from the World Cycling Centre. Getting into the rhythm, settling himself into those aero bars, getting the experience of these World Championships. This is Nielsen Paulus of the United States of America. His teammate not taking part in these World Championships, Lawson Craddock. Had a little bit of a problem with his visa to get here, Lawson Craddock, and it arrived 20 minutes after he was due to get his flight. So he chose not to come here, but Nielsen Paulus is here anyway.
So Nielsen Paulus not really renowned for his time trialling capabilities, more of an all-round cyclist. Really doing well in Grand Tours, doing well in stage racing, climbing really well. So this will be a good test for Nielsen Paulus today.
He's a rider who, yeah, we see in the climbs, but you get the feeling that Nielsen Paulus is a bit of an all-rounder, came from a mountain bike background, and we'll see whether he can produce something this afternoon. In the same way that the women do, as we just see the start of Dan Hula riding for the Netherlands. Some of the women riders use this individual time trial to get ready for next Sunday's race, or next weekend's race, sorry. Is that the same in the men, or are the men riding this because they want to try and win this title?
I think there's a real mix. I don't think it's so much used as a preparation for next Sunday's road race. But some younger riders coming through will want to gain experience in individual time trials and racing at championship level. So as much as they don't think they're capable of winning here today, they definitely will get a lot out of this individual time trial. And then you obviously have the out-and-out specialists, the riders who have put years and years of training into their time trialing, years and years of specific preparation. They're really out here today with one goal only, and that's to win.
Affini trying to beat the time of Luke Platt. Continuing with his time trial, keeping that nose right down onto the forearms. Positions in time trials have changed a lot, haven't they? Over recent times, it used to be that the riders had a really just low frontal area, got the bars as low as they could. Now it's much more thought out, isn't it, as to the position that the rider has on the bike.
That's right. I think if you look back at images and videos of time trialing from a few years ago, it was all about getting as low as you could in the front. These days, it's a lot more calculated. It's all about being as efficient as possible. So they like to say as slippery as possible.
The start of Nikias Arndt from Germany. Arndt, a rider in the World Tour. Rides for Team DSM on the roads. Started his career as a sprinter, didn't he? And now much more of a lead-out man, a rider who'll take an opportunity.
Well, I think Nikias Arndt will still do sprints when he gets the opportunity, but Team DSM have always had some really accomplished sprinters going through that team, so he's really found himself more in a lead-out rider's position. He has had some success on Australian soil in years gone by, winning in addition of the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race.
This is the arrival of Affini. Let's see what the time is going to be for the Italian rider as he makes his way into the conclusion of this time trial. The time to beat, 41:26.83. Affini now chasing that as hard as he possibly can. Is he going to run out of time? There was just a slender difference between him and Luke Clapp at the intermediate time split. Clapp against Affini. Affini is almost at the line now. What is the time going to be? It just goes past, just goes red. And he finishes 3.77 seconds down in second place for Edoardo Affini, the rider from Jumbo-Visma riding for Italy.
Very strong ride there by Edoardo Affini. You can see that he really maintained pace of Lucas Plapp consistently throughout this individual time trial. He had a slightly faster first intermediate sprint check, lost a little bit of time to the second check, and finally finishing 3.7 seconds down.
Nielsen Paulus underway for the United States of America. Paulus settling himself into the initial stages of this time trial. Rides for the team of EF Education Easy Post in the World Tour. Certainly starting pretty quickly. Getting into his stride pretty rapidly. The riders seem to be choosing pretty much the same setup as far as disc wheel and the depth of that front wheel is concerned.
Well, all the riders out on the course will have a disc rear wheel because that is the most aerodynamic option available. And then they'll have a varying degree of depth in their front wheel. So some riders will choose to use a very deep front wheel and others a little more shallow. And what dictates that is the wind and obviously how technical the course and how much elevation it is on the parkour as well.
This is Alexei Lutsenko underway. Has won some time trials in his career, including the individual time trial in the Critérium de Dauphiné back in 2021. He's also won the time trial stage of the Tour of Denmark. So Alexei Lutsenko gets himself into the first phase of this individual time trial. Lutsenko became a new father about 2 weeks ago. His wife had a baby on the rest day of La Vuelta.
It's very well timed, wasn't it?
It was, wasn't it? He even had time to get home, for her to have the baby, and then for him to come back to La Vuelta.
So he flew from Spain back to Monaco for the birth of his child, and then went back to work again.
He did, and he was back by Tuesday morning. Perfectly planned by Alexei Lutsenko.
I think more perfectly planned by
his wife, yeah.
And his baby.
Well, the logistics were planned very well. She carried out all the important bits. Yves Lampert about to get going. There he is. Can this rider produce a good time trial this afternoon? You just never know with him. Andreas Leknesund is next to go for Norway. He also rides for Team DSM, a really talented Norwegian rider, Andreas Leknesund.
Again, part of the DSM team, as you identified, a team that put a lot of emphasis on time trialing and the technical elements about it. You can always see the time trial positions are very well refined. Obviously, put a lot of time and resources into that within the team.
They spend a fair amount of time in wind tunnels on the track, like you've mentioned, trying to get themselves as drilled as possible. As we just take a look here at Stefan Bissiger. What are we going to get from Stefan Bissiger this afternoon? We either get a victory or he crashes 3 times.
I wasn't gonna put the curse on him, but
I'm not putting the curse.
You're
I'm
right.
just giving
Bissiger,
facts.
current European time trial champion, current Swiss time trial champion, very accomplished, young rider coming through, but he puts it all on the line when it comes to time trialing. As you identified, he's generally winning or crashing. Not much in between.
Nothing in between. Rides normally a 60-tooth chainring on the front of the bike, which is a mammoth gear, and churns it around.
What he reminds me of, Anthony, wearing that helmet, something you haven't seen yet since coming to Australia, a platypus.
It's not far off, is it?
It's not far off a platypus bill.
Need to see one of them by the time we get to the end of the week. Here's the hot seats. Yes, Luke Plapp is in there, having a good old chat after the end of his time trial. That's going to have felt like such a short day for him compared to a welter stage.
It's going to feel like a short race. I think time trialing always feels like a long day because there is so much emphasis that goes into that time trial and your start time, and so much preparation on the day itself. You never get an opportunity really to relax on the day of a time trial until your race is complete. But you're right, Anthony, being out there for slightly over 40 minutes, it is a very short stage compared to Grand Tour racing and the long stages.
Thanks very much for joining us. We are on this individual time trial now. The World Championship individual time trial. Current standings leave us with Luke Plapp, who is in the hot seat as the fastest rider of the race so far. At the intermediate time splits, Luke Plapp is fastest at intermediate split 2. And Eduardo Affini is fastest at the intermediate split 1. He went through there with a slightly quicker time. At the finish line, it's Plapp ahead of Affini, ahead of Matteo Dalcin. And I think things will start to shuffle around a little bit more. The start then of Bruno Amorai of France, rides for Groupama FDJ. Gets his time trial underway. A rider that we enjoy watching in the World Tour races. He's a very attacking rider, but also does a huge amount of work with teammates. Bruno Amorai underway.
Current national champion of France, Bruno Amorai, and that's what would have secured his selection to represent France in the World Championships, but not normally known for his time trialing capabilities. Normally rides as a domestique in his team, Groupama FDJ. You always see him on the attack, following breakaways or riding on the front of the bunch, bringing the breakaways back again for his team leaders.
This is Dan Heuler. Rides for the Netherlands. There's the last rider to go in this particular section. This is Matteo Sobrero.
What are your expectations of Sobrero? Won the final stage of the recent Giro d'Italia in an individual time trial. Was the national champion, recently dethroned once again by Filippo Ganna.
Here's Yves Lampert, not choosing to wear the aero hat that he wore in the Tour de France. In fact, he didn't wear it in the Tour de France. That was right. He was the only rider from this team of the Wolfpack who didn't wear it and ended up winning the time trial.
Maybe a little fashion conscious. Big upset victory to see Yves Lampert taking the opening time trial of this year's edition of the Tour de France and the first yellow jersey of the race. I'm really looking forward to seeing if we can witness another upset today by Yves Lampert.
A lot of the time trialists in the World Tour peloton said it was no surprise that Yves Lampert took the victory in Copenhagen. The benefit of hindsight is always great. I don't think anyone named him as the possible winner of the time trial in Copenhagen, but he obliterated the opposition on that particular day. Maybe the fact he could take more risk because of the rain, but he's won the Belgian Championship, beating Wout van Aert, beating Remco Evenepoel. It was in his hometown when he did. The party afterwards was incredible. Yves Lampert out on the course now.
Well, I loved Yves Lampert's interview as well after he took that yellow jersey in the Tour de France. He's saying he's just a farmer's son and now he's leading the Tour de France. It was really sweet, his interview. But he is an accomplished time trialist. He's finished 7 times on the podium at the Belgian National Championships, and he's taken 2 victories there as well.
The start of the Swiss rider, Stefan Bissegger. Bissegger rolls off the start, 7th last time out in 2021, goes sprinting out of the start. You're absolutely right, it does look like a platypus. Bissegger goes through the right-hander, gets himself up to speed and gets underway. Well, they call him the bull, not the platypus. because that was his nickname when he was on the Swiss track team, because he is full on with the way that he approaches bike racing. Nelson Powless has reached that intermediate split with the 5th fastest time.
Yeah, I can see there he was 22 seconds down, I think it was, there of the fastest time set by Affini at the first time check.
There's the intermediate splits at Dumfries Avenue at the top of that climb. Affini ahead of Clapp, ahead of Mate Delchin. Then Nicky Assant, then Nelson Powless, 23.34 seconds down at that particular point. Powless flat out downhill, trying to get that gear turned over. This is the point where you feel the wind coming off the coast.
Well, I think you feel the wind coming off the coast for most of this parkour. But there are certain points where it is a direct headwind, and then it's coming from behind you as well.
This is Magnus Court underway for Denmark. Also a member of EF Education Easy Post. What a start to the Tour de France this rider had this season. When we remember him being off the front every single day for the first few days, securing the King of the Mountains jersey when he left Denmark as we headed back to Calais for the 4th day of racing.
And then again, eventually winning stage in the Tour de France as well, out-sprinting Australia's Nick Schultz to the line. But Magnus Cort Nelson, really known for his sprinting and his breakaway results, can pull a really good time trial out of the bag once in a while as well. I think he may have been, he was second in the ultimate time trial, the ultimate stage of the Vuelta a España last year in the individual time trial. So he is a very capable time trialist.
How do you think this, as we look out over the wonderful area of Sydney, back to the start, the final rider in this wave, this is Matteo Sobrero. Stage winner, as Simon mentioned, in the Giro d'Italia, former Italian time trial champion, Filippo Ganna, now the Italian time trial champion. But Sobrero, guided of course by the famous Italian Marco Pinotti, who seems to be able to go to a team and give loads of guidance to a rider and make their time trialing really improve.
Well, Marco Pinotti has a great track record as a time trialing expert or coach within cycling teams. Now, Sobrero here, he races for the Bike Exchange Jayco team, so the Australian professional team. He's recruited across to the Australian team this year, and his time trialing has definitely stepped up with the great equipment of Bike Exchange Jayco and the guidance of Marco Pinotti.
The second wave is completed. Bruno Amarai out on the course with him, the French time trial champion, beating Remy Cavagna, who was the previous champion. We'll see how these intermediate time splits settle down over the coming next few riders who are going to arrive at the top of this climb. Still the fastest rider so far in the intermediate splits is the Australian rider Luke Clapp, who's still in the hot seat as the fastest rider at this point. He's the fastest rider at the finish line. There he is, smiling away, enjoying the moment. Intermediate split 2 is where you really start to tell how this race is going to unfold. Eduardo Affini in second place, 1.76 seconds down. Luke Clapp looks like he's just enjoying himself this afternoon, doesn't he?
And why wouldn't he be? He's rounding out his season. He was telling me he's not going back to Europe following the World Championship, so his last race for the season is next Sunday for the road race, for the Elite Men's Road Race. So he's just completed his second to last race of the year, and he's leading. He's sitting in the hot seat, so he can do no more. He just has to sit back and see what his rivals do.
A young rider who's making a big name for himself now in world cycling, Luke Clapp. Back with Stefan Bissiger. Trying to see what sort of size chainring he has on the front of this bike, because you remember in the Tour, 62 chainring, and in the rain it didn't really work. It looks massive, but he's got gear trouble again, Stefan Bissiger. Just can't get it into the gear that he needs. It's clunking all over the place.
Yeah, we did hear his gears clunking through there, so I'm not sure whether he was just changing down through the cassette. And often when you hear riders on their time trial bikes change gears, you hear that echo of the gear change because it reverberates through that disc wheel on the back.
Bissiger absolutely flying through that turn. Back into the aero tuck as quickly as possible.
Now Magnus Cort Nelson also pushing an extremely big gear up this little rise. You see him rocking and rolling there on his bike.
Magnus Cort, he lives in Andorra. Lives right up towards the top of the mountain. Once he moved there, he said his riding completely improved because he was riding at altitude, but also his climbing improved so much because he was having to climb up the mountain every single day. This is the arrival of Bruno Amarai. Third fastest time through the intermediate time split. That's the first of them, ahead of Edoardo Affini, who's at the top of the leaderboard at that particular point.
So a good start there by Bruno Amarai. One of the early riders off in the second wave.
Our next wave of riders will be starting at 3:14. It's now 10 to 3 in the afternoon here at Wollongong. In the next group of riders, a lot of different nationalities being represented, including some of the riders from the World Cycling Centre. And then the last group is where we see some huge names. In fact, the last few riders to go. It's going to be quite an exciting and enticing end to this individual time trial when the last 6 riders to go are Ethan Hayter, Bauke Mollema, Stefan Kung, Tadej Pogacar, Remco Evenepoel and Filippo Ganna. This is Yves Lampert heading up towards the first split, and he's going to be just outside the time of Edoardo Affini. And he's going to be third fastest at that point, 47.2 kilometers an hour.
So 5.71 seconds down at that first intermediate time check. You can see him nearing the crest of that climb, just pushing quite a big gear still, rolling down towards his fast right-hand corner again, picking up speed. He'll be breathing really hard here, trying to recover from that effort on the climb.
Do the riders still in a time trial try and accelerate over the top, almost hold a little bit back for that last little bit? Or is it now full on the entire time?
I think really the key in time trialing is to maintain a constant power for as much effort as possible. So you would have been pushing a consistent pace all the way over the climb and maintaining that power on the pedals over the crest of the climb to come back up to speed as quickly as possible.
21 degrees, sunny this afternoon here in Wollongong.
And it doesn't feel 21 degrees in the commentary booth.
It feels like 210 degrees. Stefan Bissiger onto the climb. He's almost at this intermediate time split. Affini's time, 9 minutes 3.10. And he's going to be outside the time of Edoardo Affini. So Stefan Bissiger has started a little bit steadily here. Needs to just settle himself in. 11 seconds down, 4th fastest for the Swiss rider.
For the current European and Swiss champion in individual time trialing, I was expecting him to really push that fastest time at the intermediate check there of Edoardo Affini, but maybe you're right, Anthony, maybe he's having some problems with his gears, because we did hear his gears then crunching once again as he dropped down through the cassette.
Making his way through there. The riders have got little electronic gear buttons, haven't they, on these aero skis, and positioned in different places, so you try and make sure you don't move your hand position very much.
Yeah, that's right. The gear systems these days are all electronic, and you can have a number of buttons on your handlebars which you can change gears from different hand positions. So a lot of the riders will have the possibility to change gears while their hands are extended in that in those skis or that extended time trialing position, but they'll also have the possibility to change gears when their hands are down towards their brakes as well.
This is Magnus Court, sprinting up towards the intermediate split. This time of Athene is proving pretty hard to beat at this first intermediate. He's obviously ridden a very accomplished first phase of this time trial when he left the start gate. Magnus Court almost at the top of the climb. He's going to be 7th place, 15.05 seconds down, 46.4 kilometers an hour for Magnus Court. Heading into the completion of the lap with the American Nielsen Paulus. Paulus looks like he's now started to get on top of his gear, start to put the pressure on. He's going to make his way past us here at the commentary position as he sets himself up for the next ride round the lap again. Nielsen Paulus not choosing to have one of the aero hats that Bissiger or Magnus Court's wearing. He's chosen to go more closed in and aero.
Has he gone for the platypus hat?
He hasn't.
Nielsen Paulus just shooting past us there, crossing the finish line for the to complete the first lap, going through fast right-hand bend. Looking really good.
Back with Stefan Bissiger.
See Stefan Bissiger there, taking that left-hand corner, another left-hand corner and going over this overpass. Going over the highway, again they come off this overpass, and then regain, it's another left-hand corner, so this is a slight tailwind section through this point.
Just took a little drink on board.
You can also see, looking across at Bissiger there, in his skin suit, so the clothing he's wearing has a plastic pocket in the back which has his number contained in there. Once again, taking into consideration every aerodynamic possibility.
Bissiger just lent it a little bit more as he went into that left-hand turn with the railed barriers on the right-hand side of the road. Doesn't want to hit those. How do the riders choose what depth of carbon fibre front wheel they put in? Is it kind of specified for different wind levels, or is it just on feel?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. Depending on if it's a very windy day, you're going to have a lot of crosswind. A rider might not want to go for a very deep section front wheel because that will make their bike very difficult to handle. Also, there's a lot of climbing in the course as well. By choosing a lower profile front wheel, it'll make their bike slightly lighter. And if it's a very technical course or a lot of slower corners, having a shallower front wheel will also make their bike easier to handle.
And on the majority of these bikes we've seen so far, they've all got spokes in the front wheels. Over the last few months in the Tour de France and other races, we've seen riders riding these bladed carbon fibre wheels. What would be the choice? Why would you choose one of those compared to a spoked wheel in the front? Is it down to sponsors, or is it down to the feeling that the bike would have?
A combination of both. The riders are generally obliged to use the equipment that's provided by their team sponsors, so their trade team sponsors. But also it's going to come down to what their preference is with regards to how their bike handles as well. Having a front wheel laced with spokes is going to be a little bit more supple, a little bit easier to handle than the aerodynamic full carbon fibre bladed spokes.
I noticed with Nielsen Paulus there, you can see the difference in the skin suit length of shorts that he normally has compared to what he's been given.
He's just trying to move his tan lines.
Maybe he is. That's a possibility too. And we're better to do it than Australia. It really is beautiful out here this afternoon as we look across Sydney, not too far away from Wollongong itself. That incredible skyline with the harbour in front, the Opera House on the left-hand side.
Did you enjoy the view when you flew in yesterday?
It was on the other side of the plane, which is a bit of a shame. Never mind. Mateo Sobrero clicking his way through the gears. I think I was asleep as well at the time.
Looking at the aerodynamic position here of Sobrero, you can see head very low. He's not using a helmet that has a large aero wing out the back. It's a very short, compact helmet. But we've done a lot of testing to find out which is the most aerodynamic helmet for Sobrero and his body shape and in this aerodynamic position.
Back out on the course with Bissiger. Pinotti was a teammate of yours, I think, at some point. Was he always really keen on trying to find the very best out of time trials that he could?
Now, Marco Pinotti, I did work with him at a team, but we were never teammates. He was working as part of the technical staff of the BMC racing team, which was the last trade team that I competed with. And he's so passionate about time trialing and all the technical elements that go with that. So you can see when he joins a team, generally their level of time trialing results really does improve.
What does he look at? Absolutely everything across the board, and that's why he makes these little differences.
He does take everything into consideration. There's no one thing that you can do with time trialing that's going to make you vastly better. You have to make sure you address every element of this discipline of the sport, and that's down to your training, your aerodynamic positioning, your equipment, and the ability to put out high power while in an aerodynamic position.
Here with Bissiger. Started his career on the junior squad of Swiss Cycling. You see the hot seat, Luke Clapp, Anafini and Delchin just...
I think they're all sending text messages to each other.
They are, I think. Busy anyway.
Passing time in the hot seat. Doesn't look too nervous, does he?
He doesn't look worried at all yet, does he? This is Bissiger. So grew up riding for the junior team of Swiss Cycling. His agent now is Fabian Cancellara.
He knew a thing or two about time trialing, didn't he?
He did, just a little bit. And Bissiger is a rider who really is quick at the individual time trial. That 62 chaining on the front. Now looks like he's starting to get a bit into his stride as we go back here with Yves Lampaert. Lampaert coming up to the completion of this first loop, riding along here at just over 50 kilometers an hour through this funnel of noise of the fans at the side of the road. 1 kilometer to go to complete the lap, then Lampaert will see him set up on his way out onto the course again through that second of our intermediate splits. It'll give us a really good idea of how these riders are comparing to the likes of Luke Clapp, who's first overall in that hot seat right now. This run is a little bit tricky, isn't it, with this uphill drag when you are getting towards the end of a time trial. It really starts to hurt the legs as Bissiger now is closing in, it feels like, on Yves Lampaert in front of him.
Well, these riders, they started at 90-second intervals down the start ramp. You could see that shortly after Yves Lampaert went under the finish line, with Stefan Bissiger going under the 1 kilometer to go banner. And at this section, these riders here, they're going to be riding in excess of 60 kilometers an hour down this slight drag. They'll lose a little bit of speed as it ramps up again towards the finish line. But I would expect that Bissiger is going significantly faster here than Yves Lampaert.
He certainly looks like it at the moment. He looks superb on this individual time trial now. The noise of the gears has kind of gone. Luke Clapp still the fastest rider at the finish line. Bissiger is coming round to complete lap number 1. We'll get a much better idea at intermediate number 2 whether Bissiger is going to close that time on Luke Clapp this afternoon. At intermediate 1, it's Affini ahead of Plapp, ahead of Lampert. At intermediate 2 at the moment, it's Plapp ahead of Affini, ahead of Nikias Arndt. Arndt's gone through there, 9.52 seconds down. Bissiger has left nothing to chance, has he? He's got every single bit of skin that can be covered is covered with this aerodynamic Lycra. He's got the mitts on, he's got arm warmers on, everything he can wear.
Well, I'm not sure if he'd have arm warmers on, but he would have a long sleeve skin suit. So, as we chatted about a little bit earlier in the race today, it's been well tested. If you have a very aerodynamic skin suit, it's a faster material than having your skin exposed to the air. So you can see Bissinger there, he's running the long sleeve skin suit, and he's also running gloves. He'll be running socks as long as possible, which is going up to the midpoint in his calf muscle. Also be running long shorts too, so having very little skin exposed.
Sobrero not really featuring yet in the particular intermediate splits. Certainly throwing the bike left and right through the turns and trying to get as much speed as he can possibly get out of this bike. As we mentioned before, rides for the Australian Bike Exchange team, so maybe a little bit of extra motivation to ride well in these championships here in Australia. This is Nielsen Paulus coming up to the second intermediate split. Paulus looks quick, but not super quick this afternoon. Like there's something a little bit missing at the moment.
For me, looking at Nielsen Paulus, it just doesn't look like he has put the time into developing his time trial position that the big favourites had in this race. You can see that he's constantly slipping forward on his saddle as well, and then having to push himself back. He also has quite a lot of hip movement. He's rocking back and forth quite a bit with his hips. And you can see in comparison to Sobrero that we're looking at just a second ago, his head was quite high, so not quite as aero.
Intermediate split 2, it's Luke Plapp ahead of Eduardo Affini. Nikias Arndt in third place, 9.52 seconds down. Then it's Nielsen Paulus, 33.08 seconds down on that time of Luke Plapp. This is the all-important split coming up now, where we'll get that real idea of whether Plapp is going to stay in that hot seat through the next phase, and I would expect him to stay, if he does stay at the end of this wave of riders, all the way through the next wave until the final group of riders.
Yeah, he's definitely set a good time, opening time for that first wave of riders, Luke Plapp. And it looks like he will set a better time than most of the riders here, or nearly all the riders in this second wave. But Anthony, who are you looking forward to seeing in this third wave of riders?
In the third wave of riders coming up, we've got a real mix of different riders from different nationalities. In particular, I think we've got maybe Derek G, who rides for Canada, who's a national time trial champion of Canada. He's riding next season for Israel Premier Tech. He's a good track rider, Derek G. And also in that group of riders, I think potentially a rider who rides for Movistar, Oya Lascano, who's a stage winner in Valony as well. So I think those two riders in particular could be ones to watch out for in the third wave. What about you?
Yeah, I did identify there Lascano. Definitely a rider that will be interesting to watch in that third wave of riders. It's Luke Durbridge, who was supposed to be in that third wave, but I see he's not a non-starter. Current Australian time trial champion. Current Australian, definitely former Australian time trial champion, Luke Durbridge, decided not to take the start in today's individual time trial. But in that third wave, quite the mix of nationalities.
We're going to see some of the riders from the World Cycling Centre as well riding in that particular wave that's coming up shortly, as we see the arrival of Andreas Leknesund of Norway to this intermediate split. Fifth fastest time, 34.24 seconds down on the time of Luke Plapp. Leknesund labouring a little bit over the top of this climb, trying to get himself over the top and into the aero tuck as quickly as possible. Guerrero now with the hands turned over on the top of those bars. There's the standings at the top of Dumfries Avenue. Clapp still with that slender advantage on Affini. Guerrero also having to push himself back in the saddle a little bit every now and then. That effort just drawing the rider forward. Those of you just joining us, welcome to this individual time trial. The riders start in Marine Drive. They go past the lighthouse on the left-hand side, through Wollongong, through the city centre, up to Gwynneville, up Mount Ousley Road, and then down to Ferry Meadow, north to Turaji Coast and up to City Beach and into the finish. In total, 312 metres of elevation that the riders will face this afternoon on this individual time trial. Last year it was Filippo Ganna who took the victory ahead of Wout van Aert and Remco Evenepoel. In 2020, Ganna won again ahead of Wout van Aert and Stefan Kung. And the year before it was the Australian Rowan Dennis who beat Remco Evenepoel into second and Filippo Ganna into third place. Rowan Dennis not riding this afternoon. He's got a family wedding. He's decided not to travel to Australia to take part in these World Championships. His season has now ended. So either Ganna wins again or we get a new winner on the top step of this individual time trial title. Here's the arrival of Bruno Amorai, the Frenchman. This looks like a really strong time. This rider really is firing this afternoon, and he goes faster significantly. 14.75 seconds faster than Luke Clapp to the second intermediate split, Simon. That's a rider who really has ridden the next phase of the time trial superbly.
Well, he's ridden that second split extremely fast. To go close to 15 seconds faster than Luke Clapp there, that's a very unexpected time for the current French time trial champion Bruno Amorai.
Bruno Amorai is a rider who, as we've mentioned before, is well known as a domestique. He rides on the front for the rest of his team. He tries to set them up for their victories. Now and then he's given his chance, but this is a real show of strength by a rider who does have to do so much work. This is Yves Lampaert onto the climb again.
Yves Lampaert working so hard on this climb. He's been putting out big power there. He's rocking and rolling on his bike as he nears the crest of this climb. Coming up to that second intermediate time check, also putting in a good time.
This is a great performance by Yves Lampaert, riding for Belgium. The time of Luke Clapp has gone by and Bruno Amorai has gone quicker. 30 minutes, 7.41, and Yves Lampaert is now on a mission. Lampaert goes to the top of the leaderboard. This is a great time. 48.8 kilometers an hour, and Lampaert now doing what he did in the Tour de France. So top of the leaderboard, Yves Lampaert, 1.02 seconds ahead of Bruno Amorai. Luke Clapp now in third. Suddenly we get a bit of a change of the standings.
There's been a big shake-up in the standings, that second intermediate time check there. Yves Lampaert leading Bruno Amorai through at just over 1 second and a big gap back to Luke Clapp.
When you look at the last wave of riders and the sort of names that we've got in there with Ganna, Evenepoel, Pogačar, Kung, Malema, Hayter, Cavagna, those sort of riders, who do you see as your top three favourites when we get to that final phase, so we can start to really think about what are the riders that we're going to expect to maybe be in the hot seats at the end of the afternoon, barring a surprise in these riders, which can happen?
Well, I think the big favourites are coming in the final wave of riders in this individual time trial. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Ethan Hayter can do. He's the sixth last rider down the start ramp, but also the defending champion, #1, Filippo Ganna. is the last rider to start today. So if he is to clock the faster time, he won't even get the opportunity to sit in the hot seat. He will be directly to the podium. And that'll be the same with Remco Evenepoel, the second last rider to start.
Dan Hula finishes third fastest time, 50.63 seconds down on the time of Luke Platt. You could see then that this title could be won by the very last rider as defending champion, in the same way that the women's race, Ellen van Dijk did that, rode straight in, straight to the podium. Fantastic performance. So it could be possible in the men's race as well.
Could be very possible in the men's race as well, particularly with such a strong group of riders in the final wave. Because you also look there and you see Remy Cavagna, former French time trial champion, current road champion, Bauke Mollema, the current champion of Holland, Nelson Oliveira from Portugal, all in that final wave of riders.
This is the arrival of Nicky Assant. 18.45 seconds down on Luke Plapp as he goes third fastest.
But it looks as though this second wave of riders have all really accelerated in the second lap of their time trial. I'm not sure if the wind has dropped off a little bit outside, making it a little bit more advantageous to this group, because they have all clocking very fast finishing times.
Stefan Bissiger. Bissiger's gone through the intermediate split with the fastest time now ahead of Lampert. We didn't see him go through the split. 7.33 seconds. That's a really stormy performance by the young bull from Switzerland, Stefan Bissiger, to go 7 seconds faster than times that we're now seeing accelerate every single rider, aren't we?
Yeah, we certainly are. So Bissiger, as we identified, he's a rider who generally wins or crashes. It's very rarely in between. So Bissiger now, he'll be taking a lot of risk to better Yves Lampart's time of that second intermediate check by more than 7 seconds. He is really going to be pushing the limits.
Great to see Stefan Bissiger having a day where things are going to his plan so far. You can see him sometimes get so disappointed, so frustrated at things going wrong for him, but sometimes you just need everything to come together, don't you? You need everything to run the way you anticipate out on the course. This is the arrival of Neilson Powless of the United States of America. Powless out on the course has looked good. He's not going to set the fastest time here. Luke Plapp is going to stay in the hot seat as the fastest rider of the day, as Powless goes fourth fastest at the finish line at 42.11.38. Let's just update you then on the intermediate splits, what the situation is with the riders. Second intermediate split, Stefan Bissiger ahead of Yves Lampert, 7.33 down. Bruno Amarai, 8.35 seconds down in third place. This is Sobrero, seventh fastest, 32.77 down. Sobrero not having a sparkling time trial this afternoon.
No, at this point in time, Mathieu Sobrero, he doesn't look like he's really on form for this individual time trial. Having won at the highest level, former Italian champion and stage winner in Grand Tours in the discipline of individual time trials. I didn't know what to expect of him here today, but at this point in time, it doesn't look like he's going to feature with the best riders.
How difficult is it for a rider to maintain now that form and that focus and that mental energy when the season is so long and they seem to have no real rest anymore?
Well, there is very little rest for these riders. You're right, Anthony. They'll take a short break at the end of the season, but there is still some racing to come this year following the World Championships for a large portion of this peloton.
This is the arrival of Alexei Lutsenko, heading up towards the conclusion of his time trial, and Lutsenko is going to be outside the time of Luke Plapp. Lutsenko's time is about to be reached now, seventh fastest time, 58.64 seconds down on the time of Luke Plapp. Lutsenko in a time trial He's won big time trials like the Dauphiné, but since then we haven't really seen him at the very top in time trialing.
No, we haven't seen him at the very top in time trialing. He's also a rider that he's a solid time trialist because he's finished in the top 10 in the Tour de France. So his time trialing is solid, but he's not an outstanding performer.
This is Lu Wan Yao Van Son, national time trial champion of Hong Kong, China. This is our third phase of riders. In this third phase, as we mentioned before, we've got Oya Lazcano riding for Movistar, the Spanish rider. And we've also got in the field in this particular wave, Gustav Barson, the South African rider as well. Phase 4 is going to be just full of the top names in world cycling. The arrival of Andreas Leknesund, riding for Norway. Leknesund has not set the world alight in this time trial. Luke Klapp is still going to be top of the leaderboard. 6th fastest time for the Norwegian.
A respectable time there by Leknesund. At this point in time, well inside the top 10 at the finish line. However, with the big favourites still to come, I think a lot of these riders are going to get shuffled further and further down the finishing order.
Down on the Wollongong beach. Start of Derek G, another Canadian rider about to get going. National time trial champion, joins Israel, the Premier Tech team, from next season. A rider who rides for their Israel Cycling Academy squad right now. So he's going to move up into the what he hopes will be the World Tour signing, although it might end up not being the World Tour.
Well, he's moving up to their, I imagine he's moving up to their highest level of team, but you can see there that Derek G, he rolled down the start ramp in an extremely big gear. He was hardly able to turn that gear for the initial few pedal strokes, but then he brought it up to speed. Now on screen here we have Bruno Amarai. So he's nearing the finish straight. A very fast time.
Bruno Amarai looking to set the standard for everyone else to beat. In the hot seat is the Australian rider, Luke Klapp, but the French time trial champion has been getting quicker and quicker throughout this course. Bruno Amarai is about to conclude this time trial, and he is going to go to the top of the leaderboard. The Frenchman reaches the line here in Wollongong. Bruno Amarai is going to be now the fastest rider, 14.81 seconds. That is a stunning performance, nearly 50 kilometers an hour, 49.8.
Well, completing the parkour in 41 minutes and 12 seconds. Bruno Amarai there finished at a very strong pace. Rode the first section, the first intermediate time check quite conservatively. It looks like he's really sped up from that point to the finish.
I guess when you sit on the front of a peloton all day like he does, or in breakaways, at some point, if you concentrate on your time trial, you're probably going to get pretty useful at it.
Yeah, most definitely. And I also see that Bruno Amarai, he also participated in the recent edition of the Vuelta a España. He abandoned the race on stage 18. Maybe that was to give himself just a little bit more time to freshen up for this individual time trial at the World Championships.
However, having had Bruno Amarai go to the top of the leaderboard, this rider has said, let's see whether I can do even better. Yves Lampaert of Belgium is travelling now in towards the finishing line. This is Yves Lampaert, the first Maillot Jaune of the Tour de France of 2022. Yves Lampaert, former Belgian champion, and is he going to go to the top of the leaderboard? Running out of time now, Yves Lampaert, is it going to be? He is just about going to do it. Wow, 0.40, 49.8 kilometers an hour, goes top of the leaderboard by less than half a second.
Very strong ride there by Yves Lampaert. You can see he doesn't have the most aerodynamic position on the bike. His head's quite high there, has the short sleeve skin suit. but he has muscled his way to the fastest time today.
It's just pure power, isn't it? The arrival of the next rider. We've seen Yves Lampert go to the top of the leaderboard. Maybe we'll just shuffle things around just a little bit more. The Swiss bull comes powering his way into the finish. This is Stefan Bissiger. Bissiger has really ridden well in the second part of this time trial. Had a few issues in the first. Is this going to be a medal opportunity for Stefan Bissiger of Switzerland? The time to beat 41.11.62, and he now smashes the time of Lampert. 22 seconds quicker, and the first rider over 50 kilometers an hour. Bissiger top of the leaderboard.
Well, the current Swiss champion has put in a fantastic ride there. Always thinking about his aerodynamics. He's constantly dropping his head down, just glancing up to seeing where he needs to go, but taking 22 seconds out of Yves Lampert.
Suddenly, having seen Luke Plapp spend all the afternoon in the hot seat, he's no longer even in the medals in about 3 minutes.
Well, the first three riders from the first wave who took off in today's individual time trial have all been moved off their hot seats. It's completely new group heading there now.
Yep, they've just said, can you kindly vacate the podium? Time to put a new wave in. That's pretty impressive. Well, I'm pleased to let you know that the sun is starting to fade a little bit here in Wollongong. It's dropping in the sky, which means that it's even more in our eyes.
The sun's only fading because you put your sunglasses on, Anthony.
Do you know, I've never commentated on from a commentary box in my sunglasses ever.
You're a rock star.
2 kilometers to go for Mateo Sobrero. Stefan Bissiger, top of the leaderboard. Can Sobrero now unseat one of those riders in the top 3?
Well, Sobrero, he didn't look fantastic in the first or the second intermediate time check in this time trial today. So he has a lot of time to make up in this last sector to the finish line. And you can see there, he just doesn't quite have the same emphasis that Yves Lampert did or Stefan Bissiger.
Bit of encouragement then for the Italian rider. Here's the arrival of Magnus Cort. Magnus Cort heading in towards the conclusion of this time trial. It's going to be outside the time of the riders that we've just seen finish. The time to beat 40 minutes, 49.59. Magnus Cort's going to be well over a minute down on that particular ride of Stefan Bissiger. Magnus Cort maybe thinking more about the road race coming up next weekend. The time of Bissiger is way past now as Magnus Cort finishes 7th fastest, 48.7 kilometers an hour. A rider who could feature really strongly, though, next weekend in the road race.
I definitely think Magnus Cort Nelson is one of the outside favourites for next weekend's elite road race. Mateo Sobrero now nearing the finish straight, coming around the corner, already outside the time of Stefan Bissiger.
Sobrero. What's his time going to be? The times to beat top 3 at the moment. Bissiger, Lampert and Bruno Amarai. He's chasing the time, but it looks like he's going to be outside the top 4 places. Mateo Sobrero of Italy concludes his time trial, 6th fastest time.
So for Sobrero, 41.36.51.
The top 3 after the second wave of riders. Stefan Bissiger ahead of Yves Lampert and Bruno Amarai. That's our top 3. is it realistic to expect that at the end of this fourth phase, we might even see those top three completely change again?
I don't think we're going to see those top three change following this third wave that are currently out on the course now, but we've spoken about it quite a lot. The big favourites are all to come at the back end of the start list. So in the fourth wave of riders starting, you've got riders like Magnus Sheffield, who's the first rider down, the young rider from the United States. I'm really looking forward to what he can do in this individual time trial. But then it's really in the last 6 or 7 riders that the big favourites for today take the start ramp. Maybe we could head to the beach after the commentary, Anthony. Cool off.
That would be a good idea.
Just a couple hundred metres behind us.
That's true. Glad we put sunscreen on anyway.
Did you?
No.
Neither did I. Wasn't expecting a suntan in the commentary booth.
Out on the course with Oil Adzcano, the Spanish rider. He's probably the best time trialist in this third phase of riders. Rides for Movistar, a stage winner in Wallonie. 22 years of age now. Used to ride for the Cara Rural team. Used to have a wildcard entry to races like La Vuelta. He's travelling really strongly right now. Spanish cycling in a much better place, isn't it, after La Vuelta, where we really saw just how well Spanish cycling is developing and improving.
Well, we witnessed a new wave of young riders coming through in Spanish cycling. Rodriguez racing for the Ineos Grenadiers team. You see Ayuso racing for the UAE team Emirates, finishing third in the Vuelta a España at only 19 years of age.
Very impressive indeed. Here's the next rider to go from Panama, Christopher Jurado. Underway, the penultimate rider in this phase, 3 times the national time trial champion of Panama, 26 years of age. Only one more rider left to go in this particular wave. Here's a bit of a rundown of the various splits. Intermediate split 1, the fastest rider is Affini. Bissiger in 4th place there, 11 seconds down. The second split, Bissiger fastest, and he had gone 5 seconds faster than Amarai. And at the finish, Bissiger fastest and 14 seconds faster than Amarai. It shows the way that Bissiger's managed this whole ride from start to finish. Because at the beginning, he looked a bit not out of sorts, but just wasn't travelling with that real momentum. But at the finish, you just saw how quick he was. He's ridden that with real sophistication this afternoon.
Well, in comparison to Amarai there, you can see their first 2 time checks were very consistent. Bissiger was around 4 seconds faster the first time check and again in the second time check. And then finally, he accelerated from the second time check all the way to the finish line, improving that advantage by a further 10 seconds.
Thanks very much for joining us. This is the UCI Road World Championships here in Wollongong. Wollongong, a city of 300,000 people. Tonight they're going to have the light show on the lighthouse. There's going to be real animation around these World Championships. This weekend around this area, it's a real weekend of sport with cycling and Aussie rules football as well, very important this weekend too. As we see Onyan Ilic continuing with his time trial. Twice the national time trial champion of Serbia. As we fly over the surf beaches around Wollongong. Not too long now until Magnus Sheffield starts the next wave of riders, and then 2 riders after him, Tobias Foss. Then the last few riders to go are just a who's who of time trialling and world cycling with the likes of Pogacar, Evenepoel and others going.
So we didn't see the start there of Gustav Basson, the African Continental individual time trial champion. So he's out on course now, and we have a bit of a gap in starters. It's around 27 minutes between Basson and Sheffield taking the start ramp.
Some of the nations in this particular wave include Drabia Alam from Bangladesh, a 38-year-old rider taking part in the World Championships. We've also got Darrell Christopher, who comes from the British Virgin Islands. So a real mix of different nations and nationalities on this course at the moment, as we look here at Christopher Gerardo of Panama. It's difficult, isn't it, for these nations who are a little bit further down the standings to actually compete with the likes of Bissiger and Affini and others. But it's a massive shop window for riders who have got real talent, who ride here in these World Championships.
Well, this is a great opportunity for riders like Christopher Gerardo, racing for Panama, to test himself against the best in the world in this discipline and really show those professional team directors that he's worthy of a contract or worthy of an opportunity to race in the World Tour. So it's a great opportunity, and as you said, Anthony, a great shot window for the new talent coming through. And I know a lot of the team directors pay very close attention to the junior world titles and also the under-23 world titles to identify the next crop of talent coming through.
It's noticeable, isn't it, when you come into the World Championships, and I noticed it immediately yesterday, how there are agents here already, the riders are here, everyone is all located in the same place, because now the teams are so sophisticated, they are looking for riders all the time, that the agents need to find that new talent, don't they? And then they need to link in with the teams and try and place these riders in the World Tour.
Yeah, that's right. It's a really important element of the sport, the team managements and the agents that represent these riders and who are trying to identify the next wave of talent coming through. They want them on their books and they want to negotiate their contracts to the big professional teams.
And it is the case now, isn't it, that the World Tour teams will look at the data completely of the riders and base their decisions on data as a real key element of a rider being part of the World Tour. So it doesn't matter whether you're from Bangladesh or the British Virgin Islands or Bermuda or Italy or Great Britain or Australia, you've still got a chance if you've got that data.
Well, if you've got the results and you've got the data to back it up, but it's definitely an element that all the World Tour teams are looking at and taking into consideration. And there's also different pathways now. We've seen riders turn professional through the Zwift Academy as well. So e-racing is another pathway to the World Tour.
Heading up to Intermediate 1 on Dumfries Avenue. A real party up here as the riders make their way to the top of this climb, to this intermediate split. The Serbian rider is about to reach there with a very respectable time. It's not going to be too far away from the time of Eduardo Affini, 14th fastest at this point. 45.4 kilometers an hour for the Serbian rider, 9 minutes 31 seconds. Got some work to do, but I'm not disrespectful time at that point.
Yeah, that's quite a solid time, and because you look down at his equipment, you can see he's riding dated equipment now, not on a bike with disc brakes. You can see he still has the cables showing out front, so it's equipment that's a few years old. So taking into consideration all the technical elements that go into time trialing and equipment is such an important part of that. He's putting in a good time.
Looking out over Sydney, not too far from where we are. Don't forget to follow the race on our various digital channels if you would like to keep up to date with what's going on at Wollongong 2022, and don't forget to follow at Union Cycliste International and UCI Cycling for all the information on these World Championships. 19.4 kilometres to go for this rider. Stay as aero as he possibly can, keeping that momentum on the bike. Moving around quite a lot, as you can see from the back, the position there. This is Lazcano. Much more momentum on this bike. Really looks strong this afternoon, Lazcano.
Well, Lazcano, yeah, looking good here. A bit of movement through his upper body, but you can see how compact he is between his shoulders, his head and his hands. Riding in a very aerodynamic position. Sitting more upright there, going through the corner, a little bit more of a conservative position, but then very quickly dropping back down to this aerodynamic position.
There was a lot of chat before these World Championships that Movistar weren't going to release their riders to ride these world titles because they're in a bit of a battle for relegation and promotion of the various World Tour teams. But after the Welter, where they scored so many points, they've now moved themselves way ahead of the relegation zone in the men's World Tour. So it's great to see that we've got some of their riders here able to race in these World Championships, because most of them wanted to do so.
That's right, with precious UCI points still on offer in the European season, a number of the professional World Tour teams didn't want their riders to travel out here to Australia to compete in the World Championships. So I'm more concerned with them picking up World Tour points in fear of being relegated out of the first division of the sport. So Team Movistar initially mentioned that they weren't going to allow their riders to come out, but they've since changed their minds. They've released a number of riders to come out here to Australia.
On the climb with Christopher Lopez from Panama. Still the fastest time at the first intermediate split is Eduardo Affini, 9 minutes 3.10. Christopher Gerardo goes through 42.6 kilometers an hour, his average speed. Back on course with this rider as he goes downhill to this next fast right-hander and heads back down to the beach area and along the coast and then through to the finish line. Still a significant amount of time to go for this Panama rider. The logistics of this time trial with the different waves are quite difficult, aren't they, where you do a city centre course, but the advantage is that you are reaching as more people by being right in the centre of everything that's going on.
Yeah, that's right. This course is basically through the city centre of Wollongong. It's 2 laps of a 17-kilometre course, so the riders have to go out in waves.
This is Remco Evenepoel, just going through the last part of his warm-up. I can imagine the week that this rider has had has not been ideal preparation for a World Championship, winning La Vuelta last Sunday night really late. Having to get here to Australia and dealing with everything that he needed to deal with.
Well, he had no time to waste between finishing the Vuelta a España in Madrid just last Sunday evening, travelling out here to Australia, so he wouldn't have even gone home in between these 2 races. He would have got out here to Australia as quick as possible in order to recover from the Vuelta a España, to recover from that long flight and put in the best performance possible in today's individual time trial, because he is one of the big favourites. Camera here now again on Lazcano. Very similar position. You can see him still rocking and rolling on his bike, constantly dropping his head down, thinking about his aerodynamics and glancing up again to see which way the road turns.
Remco Evenepoel, not too long until he goes. Last week in Belgium, everyone was going completely crazy with the thoughts of this rider winning La Vuelta. They had Remco cocktails, his town was lit red to support him to try and win that time trial. And then go on to win La Vuelta. They wanted to win this world title this afternoon, and what an end to the season it would be. The first rider ever to win Liège-Bastogne-Liège, San Sebastian and La Vuelta in one season. If he won this world title, it would be pretty incredible, wouldn't it?
Well, he's already had such an amazing season to date, but he was to cap things off with to add a world title to his Palmares. That really would cap off the year.
Belgian cycling, when you see that they hadn't had a Grand Tour victory since, what, for 44 years, for him to win is incredibly special for a nation that basically bases its whole sport on cycling.
Cycling is the most popular sport in Belgium. Even more surprising for me, the fact that a Belgian hasn't won a Grand Tour, as you mentioned, in 40 odd years. It's the fact that Remco Evenepoel, he's a part of the Quick-Step formation. So Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl, the team is currently called. Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl is one of the powerhouse teams in professional cycling, one of the most winning teams. However, they really dominate one-day racing, and racing particularly in the north of France and in Belgium. Have won numerous classics, countless stages of Grand Tours, but so rarely do they win the general classification. So Remco Evenepoel really bringing that Vuelta a España title home this year for Belgium, for the Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl team, was such a phenomenal result.
Sunny weather, 21 degrees, the wind at 21 kilometers an hour. We're getting close to the final phase of this individual time trial. The last group of riders to go. Start with Magnus Sheffield. We've got Tobias Foss, Nelson Oliveira, Mikael Bjerg, as we look out over Flagstaff Point Lighthouse, built in 1937. Assist with the navigation down to Port Kembla Harbour. It's going to be lit up this evening. It's going to be a pretty special night here in Wollongong, where we celebrate the arrival of the World Championships. Out on the course with Onion Ilic. Riding for Serbia. Riding his way through the corners, the twists and turns very well, but doesn't carry the sort of speed of the top riders so far. Remember the intermediate splits. We've seen riders like Bissiger go quicker and quicker than the previous group of riders. We're looking forward to this final phase to see just how fast the riders such as Filippo Ganna and others can go. See whether they can beat the time that has been set. Well, thank you very much for joining us. This is the UCI World Championships, looking out across Bondi Beach in Sydney. With Sydney in the background. Bondi Beach, got to be, hasn't it, one of the most famous beaches, not in Australia, in the world. The Bondi Iceberg, the well-renowned ocean pool on the southern side of the beach, well known for its coastal walks. It's got to be one of the most famous beaches in the world. At the finish line, it's Stefan Bisker, Yves Lampert, Bruno Amorai are the top 3 riders. Luke Clapp has just dropped out of that top 3 for Australia, so we're not going to have the same scenario that we had in the women's race. Luke Clapp has done everything he can. He's come towards the end of his season. One more race left for the young Australian.
Well, so many of the riders are racing here at the World Championships, carrying a lot of fatigue from the season so far. Lucas Clapp, no exception to that. His first season in the professional ranks, racing for the Ineos Grenadiers team. His first year professional, has completed the Grand Tour. The Vuelta a España finished just over a week ago, so he would have been very tired from the recent Vuelta a España, but he put in a solid performance here today. Led that first wave of riders home, sat in that hot seat until a number of these riders, particularly 3 riders in particular from this final wave, have dethroned the first wave of riders.
It's only in recent years, isn't it, that we would be sitting here talking about a young rider in his first pro season riding a Grand Tour. It's kind of become the norm now, whereas 10 years ago you wouldn't be talking about that.
It's definitely becoming the norm that riders will participate in a Grand Tour in their first season professional. However, what is also becoming the norm is how young these riders are turning professional as well. The fact that we're witnessing riders at 19, 20 years of age turn professional, a lot of them skipping the under 23 category altogether, going from the junior ranks directly to the professional peloton and participating in the biggest races.
Just to update you then on the intermediate time splits, none of the riders in this phase have beaten any of the times. The first split is Eduardo Affini, 9 minutes and 3 seconds on that first split. Bissiger in 29 minutes 59 on intermediate 2, and at the finish line it is Stefan Bissiger who is the leader. Oya Lazcano continues with his time trial, really having to work that gear over. You can see that with all the shoulder rock and everything else that's going on. Constantly just clicking his way through those gears. When you're in a time trial like this, where you are so much on the limit, there must be a real enticement for you to change down gears a lot. Whereas I guess the thing you should do is be staying in the same gear or trying to up the tempo a little bit more.
Well, the temptation is generally to throw up, not so much to change gears. These riders are absolutely on their limit in these individual time trials. You see Derek G there, he's got his hands one on top of the other in that aerodynamic position, so that's a position he's identified is the fastest for him. But you do want to move around and get up and stretch from that position when you are locked in on that very crunched over aerodynamic shape on your bike.
Looking out over Wollongong with the sea in the background and the city of 300,000 people in front of that seascape. This is Rodrigo Contreras from Colombia. And there's the measurement of the socks.
Very important measurement. So there's a limit on how high your socks are able to come up on your leg. It's only allowed to go to the midpoint, I think, between your ankle and your knee.
Yeah.
So as we've spoken about earlier, the material used on the socks is more aerodynamic than your skin, so it's an advantage to have as long as socks as possible.
Anyone who thought there was not a jig for measuring sock length, well, we've just answered the question. It's definitely there, and it is used, and all the riders are tested to make sure that they don't have socks longer than is allowed. That was Rodrigo Contreras of Colombia, who will be the second rider to go in this next phase. We're back out on the course with Onyan Ilic, a 23-year-old rider. Seems to be riding a good time trial. He's almost at the intermediate time split, 24.5 kilometres. As you notice, Simon, riding with the rim brakes on, not with all the latest aerodynamic pieces of equipment that you can get. And over the last few years, time trialing has become a little bit of an arms race, really. It's about the best equipment, the best bikes, trying to get the most aerodynamic position and bike that you can possibly get. So there's even points where riders are moving teams to go to teams that have the right aerodynamic equipment.
Well, it's definitely something that the time trial specialists take into consideration when they are changing teams. They do want to identify that they're going to a team that has the best equipment on offer, allowing them to time trial to the best of their capabilities.
This is Miguel Heidemann, the German rider, rides for B&B Hotels. Just coming up to that intermediate time split. B&B Hotels, which is going to be a significantly different team next season, isn't it? From what we're hearing, we can't say who their sponsor's going to be yet, but they have signed a big sponsor for next season and now starting to sign some big name riders to go with it.
Yeah, I anticipate we're going to see a very different B&B Hotels next season. I think it's still all rumours at this stage, but the rumour has it they've signed a big sponsor and are starting to recruit some big name riders, which is very exciting.
Some of the riders who've been linked with that squad include, of course, Mark Cavendish. Whether he goes there or not remains to be seen. He is a former teammate of the team manager, Jerome Pinault. So there could be a link there. There could be the possibility that Cavendish continues his pro career. We know that he's not staying at the Quick Step Alpha Vinyl team, so he has to find a new home. And why not be with a former teammate in Jerome Pinault, who knows exactly what he's like as a rider, and I'm sure would give him that free rein to try and take Eddie Merckx's record. Because in the B&B Hotels or the new sponsors kit, wouldn't Jerome Pinault love to have a rider as he breaks Eddie Merckx's record in the Tour de France?
Yeah, that's right. Last year, Mark Cavendish, he equalled the record of stage wins that has been held for so long by Eddie Merckx at the Tour de France. Mark Cavendish not selected for the most recent edition of the Tour. He's been searching for a team that is going to give him the opportunity to race in one more edition of the Tour de France and try and take that record from Eddie Merckx.
Heading up towards the intermediate split, Oya Ladzcano catching the rider in front of him, but still 1 minute and 30 odd seconds down on the rider who currently leads, Stefan Bissiger, 16th fastest time for Oya Ladzcano. Goes back into the aero tuck as quickly as possible and heads down the other side through that fast right-hander. Ladzcano catching the rider in front of him. Looks like it is
Alam, the first rider off in this wave.
Yep, he's gone through there. The 38-year-old rider from Bangladesh, riding his first ever World Championships.
What an experience.
Huge experience. It must be a massive experience to be on this stage. Oya Ladzcano downhill now in that aero tuck.
You can see how fast those corners are off that climb. The fast right-hand bends. Nice little apex through the corner. Corner camber in the right direction for the riders to hold maximum speed through there.
When we look at the setup of these bikes, and we've seen some riders riding with the ceramic chains and the big jockey wheels on the back, how important is that to just have everything that slick?
Well, it's important that the riders have utilised the best equipment on offer by their sponsors. So a number of riders, a number of teams are sponsored by those ceramic speed rear jockey wheels that you're talking about. So they utilise those with the goal of having the least amount of resistance possible going through their drive chain.
This is the Norwegian rider, Tobias Foss. There's an opportunity for Tobias Foss this afternoon, isn't there?
Well, this is a great test for Tobias Foss. He's current Norwegian time trialling champion, racing for the Jumbo-Visma professional team. Going from strength to strength in his time trialling, so a good opportunity for him to test himself against the best in the world. Going at it in his 4th and final wave today.
Set to go on his 34 kilometre journey.
Underway then. In just a moment, this is the rider from the United States of America. This is Magnus Sheffield, winner this year of Brabantse Pijl, one of the semi-classic races. Stage winner in the Tour of Denmark, stage winner in the Ruta del Sol. This rider's had a great start to his professional career with Ineos Grenadiers. Only 20 years of age, from the USA, and already winning races like Brabantse Pijl, Simon. To achieve that in your first season is pretty impressive.
Very impressive, the first season in the professional ranks for Magnus Sheffield. He would be one of the youngest riders, if not the youngest rider, in this elite individual time trial. Younger than a large portion of the riders racing in the under-23 time trial later or throughout next week. But Sheffield is definitely a big talent for the future.
I think the riders can choose, can't they, to stay as an under-23 rider or move to elite. But I think if they're in a World Tour team, they have to ride.
I think once they're racing in the elite or the World Tour peloton, they have the opportunity to race in the World Tour category, but then they cannot go back and race in the under-23 after that.
This is Rodrigo Contreras in the start ramp for Colombia. About to get going. Has won a stage of Vuelta Colombia in the individual time trial. Gets underway. A huge reception for the Colombian rider. Contreras, we know that his socks are perfectly high in terms of length. Haven't seen them being measured just a while ago. We're into this final phase. Don't know about you, but I'm excited to see how this last few riders go, because this is going to be pretty special, seeing the names of Ganna, Evenepoel, Pogacar, Stefan Kung, Ethan Hayter, Bauke Mollema, all racing on this course.
Absolutely. And who are you going to put your tip and curse on, Anthony?
And curse. I'm going to say Ethan Hayter.
Ethan Hayter. It's his birthday. You can't curse him today.
No, that's true. That would be totally wrong.
No, for me, the big favourite is Filippo Ganna, having won the last and most recent 2 editions of the World Time Trial Championships on this fast course. Well, a course that has a real combination of the technical elements, a short climb, and some very fast sections. I know he's probably the bookie's favourite, but he's my favourite too.
Here's the start of Tobias Foss. Twice the national champion. Tobias Foss underway. Finished 6th in the Giro d'Italia individual time trial this season, stage number 2. Finished 8th in the final time trial at the end of the Giro, won by Sobrero. So Tobias Foss gets into time trial mode and makes his way out of the start area. Not long until we see the really big names in time trialing go. This is Onyan Ilic, a Serbian rider, almost at the completion of this individual time trial. Here's the waiting area. Remy Cavagna with that all-important aero hat on. There's Mikael Bjerg. At some point, Mikael Bjerg has got to break through in elite time trials, bearing in mind how many world titles he won at under 23 level, surely.
Yeah, very impressive, Pelmars, as an under-23 in the time trialling discipline. Turned professional quite young as well. Now races for UAE Team Emirates. A very reliable teammate for Tadej Pogacar in the Tour de France. But today, it's his own opportunity.
The start then of Evgeny Fedorov. Kazakhstan rider about to get going. Evgeny Fedorov is underway. rides for the Astana Kazakhstan team, former Asian cycling time trial champion. And only 10 riders left to take to the starts. Here is Ethan Hayter. Almost ready for this individual time trial. Yesterday when they rode the course, before they rode the course, many people were saying the winner of this time trial would be Ethan Hayter. And now after they rode it, they said they weren't so sure because of the way that the corners and the turns really were a little bit different.
Well, I'm not so sure if the parkour really doesn't suit Ethan Hayter because he is a very complete rider. He's a time trialling sprinter, you would say. So good bike handling.
Nelson Oliveira of Portugal about to get started. Nelson Oliveira about to roll down the start ramp. He's just ridden La Vuelta. Couldn't perform superbly in the time trial. Came 14th behind Remco Evenepoel, who won it. This is Miguel Heidemann. He was in that third phase of riders. Heading into the conclusion of his time trial. Going to be about a minute or so down on the current leader, Stefan Bissiger. Miguel Heidemann about to reach the conclusion of this time trial in Wollongong. And it's going to be at the line, 9th fastest, 48.8 kilometres an hour.
Well, all out, all the way to the line there for Heidemann. Respectable time, finishing inside the top 10 at this point in the race.
He's got all the aerodynamics on that skin suit, the ribs to try and help the airflow over the body. Go back with Nelson Oliveira.
Oliveira is a 3-time Portuguese national time trialling champion. Very consistent performer, great domestique for his teammates, part of the Movistar team.
Set today.
Stage winner in La Vuelta in 2015.
Older, fancied rivals.
Next rider to go is Mikael Bjerg. His wife rode in the women's race earlier on. Underway for Mikael Bjerg. Can this rider produce a huge time trial this afternoon? Because when he rode the Under-23 World Championships, he absolutely dominated every single year.
Well, he is a real time trialling specialist, Mikael Bjerg. You can see a lot of emphasis has gone into his position there. You can see he has those 3D printed extensions on his bike, those arm pads, extensions there, up quite high actually as well. So you can see he has his elbows up significantly higher than a number of his rivals because he is such a tall rider.
A rider who's ridden in support of Tadej Pogačar, of course, in the Tour de France, one of the main domestiques for that squad. There's a few rumours today that Adam Yates is going to the UAE Team Emirates. That could be an interesting combination with Tadej Pogačar, Adam Yates, Mikael Bjerg and all those riders. The start then of Mathieu Bodnar, who's the stage winner in the Tour de France in the time trial.
And Bodnar, a very accomplished time trialist. 13 times on the podium at his national championships, 8 times Polish national champion.
Bodnar underway for Poland. Only 7 riders left to take to the start of this individual time trial. It's a who's who of time trialing now, all the way in. Just to remind you then that the current standings in this individual time trial, let's just see Tadej Pogacar getting ready. He just looks like he just loves racing. Every single time you see him getting ready, it looks like he's just waiting in anticipation.
It's a two-time Tour de France champion. Every time on his bike, he's on his bike, he looks like he's riding down to the park.
It does.
Having a great time.
Certainly looks ready for these particular races.
Now, Tadej Pogacar has obviously performed extremely well in individual time trials within stage races, but he doesn't have a great track record in one-day time trials. So this will be a great test for him to see how he can go in this individual time trial today.
Well, look at the time on Dumfries Avenue on the top of this climb. Magnus Sheffield has gone through 8.36 seconds faster than Eduardo Affini. The young American is already flying. The start of Remy Cavagna. Cavagna, former French champion.
Now, he also just completed the recent Vuelta a España in support of Remco Evenepoel, who went on to win the race. Remy Cavagna did an enormous amount of work on the front of the peloton in support of Evenepoel, current French road champion, former French time trial champion. This is a great opportunity for him today.
Confirmation then at intermediate split 1. It's Magnus Sheffield who's now the fastest rider. 8 minutes 54.74 was his time. That was ahead of Eduardo Affini at 8.36 seconds slower, and Luke Plapp 10.47 seconds slower at that particular intermediate split. At the second split, it's Bissiger ahead of Lampert, ahead of Bruno Amorite, and at the finish line at this moment in time, it's Bissiger ahead of Lampert, ahead of Bruno Amorite. That's our top 3 riders. Tobias Foss is reaching the intermediate split. The time to beat Magnus Sheffield, 8:54.74, and he's gone just a little bit quicker. 1.75 seconds faster than Magnus Sheffield for Tobias Foss, 48.6 kilometers an hour. The start of Ethan Hayter of Great Britain. Hayter through that first corner wearing the black armband in remembrance of Queen Elizabeth II. The British riders choosing to do that if they wish. As we come back here to see the Swiss rider Stefan Kung, bronze medalist in 2020, 4th in the Olympic Games. A rider who's so often close to taking a mammoth victory in one of these huge moments. Has got the European title, but not the world's.
No, and I think the world title is the one he would most dearly love to win, Stefan Kung. He's been a time trialling specialist for basically his entire career. As you identified, 5 times national champion. He's so passionate about time trialling, and he puts so much effort into perfecting this.
Mikael Bjerg out on the course. Malcolm Oliver, the Dutch time trial champion, on the start in Wollongong. It's quite often forgotten how good a time trialist this rider is.
I think it's easy to forget how good a time trialist Malcolm Oliver is, because he is so good at so many disciplines of cycling, so many areas of the sport. A fantastic climber, great breakaway specialist. This year, the Dutch champion, because I think with everything that Malcolm Oliver can do, time trialing is probably not his most renowned speciality.
Malcolm Oliver rides for the Trek Segafredo team, settling himself into the first few seconds of this time trial. How tough is it when you go off that start ramp to find a rhythm and find what you feel is right? Is it all about looking at the computer and thinking, okay, we'll keep it at that watts, or is it different to that?
Well, it's really challenging to maintain a specific power on such a technical course like this one, because you are on and off the pedal so much through all the corners, up and down these short climbs. if it's a long straight time trial or really flat or a consistent gradient, it's easy to follow power. But when it starts out like this, you are definitely really following your feeling more so than anything else. A few last minute repairs there to the helmet of Filippo Ganna. He must have had a quick issue.
The start of Stefan Kung. Stefan Kung underway, fourth in the Olympic Games, bronze medalist in 2020 in the World Championships. Only 3 more riders left to go. Those 3 riders, though, are mammoth names in the world of cycling.
Nelson Oliveira there going over the intermediate time check. So I think he was in 6th place. With the 3 names remaining to start in this time trial, 3 of the most exciting riders of the sport. Tadej Pogacar, 2 times Tour de France champion. Remco Evenepoel, recent winner of the Vuelta a España and 2-time defending champion in this race, the World Individual Time Trial Championships, Filippo Ganna.
It's a huge last 3. This is going to be pretty special. Just to update on the intermediate splits, the first split, Tobias Foss is the fastest by 1.75 seconds on Magnus Schaffield. Back to Tadej Pogacar, twice the winner of the Tour de France.
34 kilometers is what awaits now.
Takes a big deep breath. What is Pogacar going to achieve this afternoon? Is it going to be a world title in the time trial? He certainly looks up for this. Pogacar is underway to a huge reception. He looks really up for this time trial this afternoon. I thought he might ride this as a warm-up for the road race, but that's not his intention, is it?
I think every time Tadej Pogacar pins a number on his back, he's thinking about winning the race. You can see how motivated he was, how serious he was there at the start. He may be all smiles, but he's definitely very serious about this time trial. And this is a very exciting race. I'm looking forward to seeing what Tadej Pogacar can do here, testing himself in a one-day time trial against the absolute specialists.
Well, the scene is set. Pogacar, who's been on great form over the last week. He won a race in Canada just a week ago, didn't he? Came straight here after that. So Pogacar, we know, is coming to the end of the season, but coming to the end of the season in which he is feeling really strong and competitive. Here's Filippo Ganna. The start then of Remco Evenepoel. He's got that aero hat on. He obliterated the field in La Vuelta 2 weeks ago. Evenepoel getting set, the penultimate rider to go. Waiting for the time to tick down. Is it a date with a rainbow jersey? Let's find out in about 40 minutes' time. Remco Evenepoel underway for Belgium. Looking space age in that hat. He turns right and goes out. There is no holds barred through that corner. He's going flat out. He's going to go all the way to the finish in full pursuit mode.
Remco Evenepoel, you look at his cycling Palmares and he's amassed some of the biggest races in the sport. You would have to say time trialing is probably his most specialist field. He won the world title as a junior and he's finished twice on the podium already in the elite ranks at only 22 years of age. Second last year.
He's an impressive time trialist, he really is. As a junior, he won the time trial, he won the road race. The start of the defending champion, Filippo Ganna, about to get underway. Ganna has taken the last 2 world titles. Can he do the same again? Ganna last year beat Wout van Aert into second, Remco Evenepoel into third. The year before, Ganna beat Wout van Aert and Kung. Ganna was the bronze medalist behind Rowan Dennis in 2019. It could go any way.
It could go anyway, and what a contrast in riders. You had Filippo Ganna, 193 centimetres tall, 83 kilos, racing against Remco Evenepoel, 171 centimetres tall and 63 kilos.
Total contrast in stature between those two riders. Ganna is into time trial mode. A rider who has said he's going to try and break the world hour record in a few weeks' time on the same weekend as Lombardia and Paris Tour. This is another warm-up. We know that he's been built a special bike for that hour record. He wants to take it away from Dan Bigham, who is one of the consultants on the Ineos team who help out with aero wheels and bikes and other aerodynamic thoughts. But now Ganna's going to go out and try and take the record away from Dan Bigham, who set it himself just a few weeks ago.
Well, such a powerful position there by Filippo Ganna. You can see how open his hips are, how narrow his arms are, his shoulders are, how low his head is. He doesn't even look like he's going fast, but he's going to be going in excess of 60 kilometers an hour.
Every pedal stroke looks like he's just touching over the gears, riding very easily to a Sunday meetup or something, whereas he's travelling along at over 50 kilometres an hour. Back with the Dutch champion, Bauke Mollema. Always looks like he's under pressure. Rocking and rolling, shoulders moving, everything moving, but it belies just how strong and how fast this rider really is.
He rocks and rolls on his bike, but you can see how narrow Bauke Mollema is there as well. We have Ethan Hayter nearing the first intermediate time check.
Ethan Hayter looks to have been going up there pretty steadily, but he's gone through with the fastest time so far. 8 minutes 52.42, and Ethan Hayter looks like he's just riding so easy, whereas he's actually absolutely flying his way up this climb.
He looks like he is cruising, yet he is the fastest rider to that first intermediate time check.
Pretty incredible from Ethan Hayter. Dropped out of La Vuelta after getting COVID. He said he had no symptoms at all. Decided to concentrate on coming here to the World Championships to see if he could get a medal.
Well, we just witnessed Filippo Ganna go through that right-hand corner there, and he is using every centimetre of the road. You can see on the extreme right-hand shoulder of the road, he cuts it through the apex, brushing the gutter all the way to the gutter again on the exit of the corner, maintaining as high speed as possible.
Evenepoel surely is going to have more tiredness in the legs after that Vuelta, which was so fast and demanding every single day.
He must be carrying a lot of fatigue, but you can imagine the emotional high that he would be on off the back of winning his first Grand Tour, and the fact that it's his first Grand Tour that he has completed as a rider. Prior to that, he went to stage 18 in last year's Giro d'Italia before abandoning. See, this year completing the Vuelta a España with such maturity as well. He took the lead after around a week of racing and held it all the way to the finish.
Yeah, his maturity was incredible. Here's Stefan Kung on the climb. Can he get close to the time of Ethan Hayter? So often this rider misses out. Today, let's see if he can do it. Stefan Kung powering his way towards the first intermediate split. The time to beat, 8:52.42. He's going to push Ethan Hayter pretty close. He makes his way to the intermediate time split. He's going to go top of the leaderboard. 1.69 seconds for Stefan Kung.
As you mentioned, Stefan Kung, he's gone so close to big results in individual time trialling so many times over. He started out on the right foot here, fastest to the first check.
Right on the limit for Stefan Kung through that turn. Finished bronze medalist in 2020. That's the only time he's managed to get himself on the podium, but he's won other titles, that European title. He looks to be taking a few risks this afternoon. He wants to win the rainbow bands. That's his dream.
Stefan Kung, a former teammate of mine, extremely hard worker, extremely professional in his approach. He actually has another former teammate of mine, Michael Albacini, in his follow car as the coach of the Swiss team. Albacini, very experienced campaigner. He'll be giving Stefan Kung constant updates and words of advice throughout this time trial.
It's the one big thing he dreams about, isn't it? To win the world title as a time trialist. He wants to wear those rainbow bands next season. Stefan Kung looks so far like he's made a really good start to this individual time trial. Came close on the road as well, didn't he, to winning a world title?
Finishing on the podium in Harrogate.
In those terrible weather conditions behind Mads Pedersen. Here's Tadej Pogačar, a rival at the intermediate split. He's going to have lost a fair amount of time here. The winner of the Tour de France, he might be surprised to know that he's lost 15.89 seconds to Ethan Hayter. Pogačar has some work to do.
Yeah, Pogačar there, losing 15.89 seconds already in the first intermediate time check, so he's going to have to really accelerate from this point on.
Out with Remco Evenepoel. Let's see what he does at the top of this mountain, this intermediate split.
See, Remco Evenepoel here is on the climb. However, he's maintained this seated position, this aerodynamic position with his hands. He hasn't sat up yet. He hasn't got out of the saddle.
This style that he has is pretty special, isn't it? The way that he's able to just stay in there, keep the momentum high, gets out the saddle now, churns over a bigger gear, changes gear before he does so, and stays with the frontal area as low as he possibly can. The time of Stefan Kung, 8 minutes 50.73, and this rider's getting close to it. The first intermediate time split here on Dumfries Avenue, and he's just 0.61 outside.
Wow, there's nothing in it. Remco Evenepoel getting out of the saddle there for the final 100 metres or so of the climb before the intermediate time check. These times so far are so close. Now Remco Evenepoel going through this fast right-hand corner, sitting up a little bit to take a few breaths, trying to recover from that effort. Quickly down, dropping back down through the gears.
It takes a massive amount of discipline, doesn't it, to win a Grand Tour like the Vuelta and then be here for the World Championships. To not go and celebrate for 2 or 3 days and take some time off. He just comes straight from the Vuelta straight to the World Championships so that he can hold his form and be the best rider he possibly can be.
Well, it's so important that Evenepoel got out here to Australia as quickly as possible following the Vuelta a España. Need to get to Australia, adapt to the different time zone and recover from that 3-week race.
Ganna working hard. Let's see what the first split is going to be. Filippo Ganna, the time to beat. Stefan Kung's time is coming up. 8:50.73 for Stefan Kung. Can Ganna go close to that time? Is he going to be just outside? The time goes red. Stefan Kung is going to be top of the leaderboard. Oh, Ganna goes top of the leaderboard. Not quite red. He just eclipses the time, I think, of Stefan Kung. Only just. There's nothing in it so far.
Filippo Ganna went through that intermediate time check in 5th position. 8 minutes and 53 seconds. He was 2.38 seconds down.
Sorry there about that little graphic change then. It did go red, so then it changed back to green. But you're absolutely right. Ganna's gone through, 2.38 seconds down on the time. There's confirmation. Stefan Kung leads, 8:50.73. Evenepoel at 0.61, Hayter at 1.69. Ganna, so far, this course not suiting him. 2.38 seconds down in 5th place. Sheffield, his teammate in Ineos, 4 seconds down.
So 4 seconds separating the first 6 riders at the intermediate time check.
It's shaping up to be a pretty special finish. Here's the arrival of the youngster Magnus Sheffield, the American rider, at the second intermediate split, chasing the time of Bissiger and goes 21.11 seconds faster.
He smashed the time there of Bissinger.
This really is shaping up, Simon, to be a little bit special. Something quite enticing as we decide the men's individual time trial.
Oh, Ethan Hayter really pushing the limits through that tight right-hand corner. You can see his bike shaking through the corner there. Now coming up to this section, just over 1 kilometre to go until he passes the finish line for the first time.
Ethan Hayter, so at home on his time trial bike, grew up on the track as well. When it comes to the road race, oh no, he's got problems here.
Looks as though he has dropped his chain there. You can see it's dropped off between the chain rings. He's trying to bounce it back on again.
He's got big problems here. Oh, and Ethan Hayter, you heard him. You didn't need a translation for what he thought, and now he is pretty angry. This rider leading this time trial. Quick bike change, but this is going to cost him significantly. He's kind of also lost the head a bit. Ethan Hayter, who was leading, had gone through that split with the fastest time. 1 kilometre to go to the end of this section.
Devastating there for Ethan Hayter. You can see there at this point in time over that little speed hump, it looks as though his chain had jumped off the chain ring. He's looked down, tried to move the front derailleur to get his chain back onto that big chain ring. He reaches down with his hand, unable to do it, bounces his back wheel, still couldn't do it, and choosing to go for the bike change. That is a real pity for Hayter.
Is he using a single chain ring on the front? That's what I can't see. I don't know if he is. I'd be surprised, but
he may be using a single front chain ring. I would be surprised, but normally he would have a derailleur there as well, just holding that front chain, the chain on the front chain ring.
He has got a derailleur there, so he's got a front derailleur, but yeah, that gear chain coming off. Simon, how many seconds will that have cost him? Significant time, yeah?
Oh, that has cost him a significant time, up to 30 seconds there to go through that bike change. However, it's the fact that he would have lost rhythm there for a few minutes as well and lost concentration. You can see the frustration on Hayter.
Fastest time now at the intermediate split. Tobias Foss, 20.52 seconds ahead of Magnus Sheffield. Foss now is starting to roll as well. But Hayter, it's everything. It's the combination, isn't it? The frustration. Whereas everything was flowing and going well, suddenly everything is going wrong.
And he looks so smooth and so in control at that first intermediate time check, going over the summit of that little crest, hardly moving at all, rocking and rolling, however, clocking one of the fastest times. Back now with Stefan Kung.
You asked me earlier on who was my rider for the day. Ethan Hayter, I'm sorry. Second intermediate split. It's Tobias Foss ahead of Magnus Sheffield, ahead of Stefan Bissiger. At the finish line, if you've just joined us, Stefan Bissiger is the leader, ahead of Yves Lampert and Bruno Amarai. But we're on to the final phase of riders, where we decide where this world title is going. 14 riders in this final phase. They've got to beat the time, of course, of Bissiger, but so far, 2 riders have beaten him at the second intermediate split, Tobias Foss and Magnus Sheffield. At the first split, Stefan Kung has gone through with the fastest time, ahead of Remco Evenepoel and Ethan Hayter. So Evenepoel 0.61 down on Stefan Kung. Filippo Ganna, 5th fastest at 2.38 seconds. It's really close between the top riders. 2.38 seconds covering the top 5 right now. It's going to come down to margins of seconds here and there.
It's going to be hundreds of seconds by the time they get to the finish of today's individual time trial World Championships. We just witnessed Belka Mollema there go through the finish line for the first passage, nearly completing the first lap.
Thanks very much for joining us. This is the World Championship Men's Elite Time Trial. I'm Anthony McCrossan, alongside me Simon Gerrans, as we bring you the action and the run-in to find out who takes the rainbow bands on the afternoon of the first day of competition. Stefan Kung has just gone flying past us across the finish line, looking really quick. In fact, by the time I turn my head to the left, he's already out of sight, having gone round the right-hander and on his way into Wollongong City for the next phase of this time trial. This is Filippo Ganna, who right now has got some work to do. He's fifth fastest through the first split. He's only 2.38 down, but he needs to track Stefan Kung. Twice the world champion, fifth in the Olympic Games.
Now, the Italian time trial specialist needs to really draw on his experience, because he has to accelerate in the second part of this individual time trial. It would have been a blow to his morale to cross the first intermediate time check back in fifth place. So from here on, he needs to accelerate, and he needs to get back on top of things.
Ganna, 50 kilometers an hour. He's going to try and break the hour record in around a month's time. He's had a special bike built for that particular time trial, which will be on the track on the same weekend as Giro Lombardia. We understand the organisers want to try and get him to move the day away from Lombardia's day. But Ganna really looking good. He's leaned down a lot, hasn't he, Filippo Ganna? When you look at him here in this skin suit, the way he's riding right now, he's a strong rider, but a lot leaner than he was.
Yeah, as he's getting older, he's probably starting to tone down a little bit, lose a little bit of that muscle mass that comes with racing long stage races and 3-week tours. You can see he is a lot finer now, but also that position, he looks like he's a long way forward. Very high saddle, however narrow through the shoulders and low in his head.
Look at the time difference between Ganna and Evenepoel. It's 0.02 of a second right now, with 18.4 kilometers of racing to go. There is no room for going through a corner slightly wrong. You have to be absolute perfection through every twist, every turn. You can't lose any time on the climb, with such a slender difference between these two riders.
No, that's right. It will be a race that's won and lost by a matter of seconds. Those two riders so evenly matched at this point on the parkour, cannot afford to get anything wrong.
Stefan Kung. Look at the power going through that bike right now as he flows his way along this course. I think he's changed his position a little bit on this bike. He's managed to get the head a little bit lower as the light fades. Cutting that corner as close as he can. Remco Evenepoel's just gone past us here in the commentary position. He looks really quick. So impressive this afternoon. Let's update you then, for those of you who have just joined us now. Stefan Kung.
Stefan Kung has a rider in his sight, so it looks as though he may be catching one rider who started in front of him.
Bauke Mollema started a minute and a half in front of Stefan Kung. Is he going to catch the Dutch champion? We can see just ahead. You're right, there is a rider, and it is the style of Bauke Mollema. There's no doubting the style of the Dutchman. And look at the way Stefan Kung, he's cutting every single little corner, finding the best possible route to the finish line.
Well, that's going to be great for Stefan Kung, because that's going to give him that little bit of extra motivation, that bit of morale that he needs at this point on the parkour. He has a rider ahead of him that he is trying to chase down and pass.
We see the way that these top riders are riding this course, and we talked about a little while earlier where they almost memorise the twists and turns of the course itself. A little bit like a downhill skier almost, knowing that in their vision they know what turns are coming up, how the course is flowing and running.
That's right, there are no less than 15 corners on this 17-kilometre lap, so these riders would have analysed this parkour with video analysis before coming out here to Australia, and they would have all ridden the course a number of times before today's race. So they would have each of these corners memorised.
Ethan Hayter is taking a few risks. He has to, because he needs to bring this time back. He is so fast this afternoon, has had a bike change. Surely that's cost him the world title, unfortunately. We'll get an idea at the next intermediate split how things stand for the top riders. The last few riders to go were Hayter, Mollema, Kung, Pogacar, Evenepoel and Filippo Ganna. Out on the course with Remco Evenepoel. How hard is it, Simon, to hold some form when you've just won a race like La Vuelta for another week and be still mentally fresh enough as Kung catches Mollema?
It would be extremely difficult for Remco Evenepoel to stay focused and stay concentrated after he achieved his big objective of the year, and that was to win the Vuelta a España. But it's so important that he does stay switched on for this individual time trial and also for the road race coming next weekend.
It's not going the way of Remy Cavagna, unfortunately. Bauke Mollema caught for 1 minute 30 seconds by Stefan Kung. The Dutch time trial champion is being made to look like he is in a different league. Look at the speed through the corners of these riders. It's so impressive to watch.
And such a contrast in techniques as well. You can see that Bauke Mollema there rocking and rolling over his bike. Stefan Kung, picture perfect.
Magnus Sheffield. Well, there's a surprise. This rider has been beating the time of Stefan Bitziger out on the course, but Magnus Sheffield has lost a huge amount of time on the running. The American rider went through the second split faster by 21 seconds on Stefan Bitziger. And I don't know if something's happened out on the course, because Sheffield has ended up 57.4 seconds down.
He must have had a mishap at some point in that final section of the parkour, because in 10 kilometres, as you identified, he's lost nearly a minute on Bissinger. Even if he started to fade a little bit in form, then he wouldn't have lost that much time. He must have had a mishap.
The first of the riders in this phase to finish. Well, Sheffield was in the hunt for a medal. There was no doubt about that. Here's the arrival of Tobias Foss. Well, this rider is looking strong and looking fast. At the intermediate split, he was 20 seconds ahead of Sheffield, 41 ahead of Bissiger. And Tobias Foss of Norway comes flowing round this turn and looking strong. And this is going to be a pretty special time.
Tobias Foss has the fastest second intermediate time check, and he's looking good to be the fastest at the finish.
Tobias Foss of Norway, look at that. This is an all-out effort to the line. 46.81 seconds faster than the Swiss rider Bissiger. He's absolutely smashed him into the next city. Tobias Foss, top of the leaderboard now. Well, we were talking yesterday, what riders might be outsiders, which rider might be a surprise. And you mentioned Foss as a rider who might be up there, and this is showing just how good he is.
Well, I was expecting a big performance by Tobias Foss, but not this big. That is an outstanding time. He has put some absolute specialists here further down the rankings.
Top of the leaderboard then, Tobias Foss ahead of Bissiger, ahead of Yves Lampert, the first yellow jersey of this year's Tour de France. At the second intermediate split in Dumfries Avenue at the top of this climb. Stefan Kung is firing on all cylinders right now. This rider heading to this intermediate split goes faster than Foss by 11.5 seconds. 50.5 kilometers an hour by Stefan Kung.
Well, Stefan Kung on track here to put in a huge performance. Now, this last part of the circuit, that really suits the strengths of Stefan Kung. It's faster, open corners. The big Swiss rider will power through this section.
Ethan Hayes has gone through there, 43 seconds down on Stefan Kung. He will be really unhappy with that performance after having that bike change. It shows you how much time it's cost him. He was 1.69 seconds down on Stefan Kung at the first split, and he's now 43 seconds down. He's out of the medals by the looks of things. Kung now leans it over right on the limit through that turn. This rider is trying to find free speed. Filippo Ganna, what is his time going to be at the second split? Have we got a race on our hands between Ganna and Kung and Remco Evenepoel for the gold medal?
Well, riding here at 65 kilometers an hour, Filippo Ganna's form gives nothing away. He is so smooth on his bike.
Generally gets quicker and quicker as the time trial goes on. Leans it into that turn. Yet again, the Olympic Team Pursuit champion. Now he gets back into the aero tuck. Ganna searching for a hat-trick of wins in the World Championships. Can he do it again? Flicking his way through the gears. We haven't seen much of Tadej Pogačar out on the course. He's not really figuring, maybe using it a little bit to get over the travel here. Here is Tadej Pogačar with that familiar style as he revs it over the top. But he doesn't have that speed and firepower that the specialists like Kung have in this individual time trial. Pogačar is almost at the intermediate split. The time of Stefan Kung, 29.0590, fifth fastest for the double winner of the Tour de France.
Well, fifth fastest is a solid time, but it's not going to put him in contention to win this world title.
The arrival of Nelson Oliveira. Heading into the conclusion of this time trial. Oliveira is going to be around about a minute or so down at the finish line. Foss is going to stay in the current hot seats. But there's some riders who fancy taking the legs away. Oliveira finishes third fastest onto the hot seats for Nelson Oliveira. Might not manage to get there by the time that the next riders come in, but he's certainly there at the moment. This is the arrival of the winner of La Vuelta. Look at the time compared to Stefan Kung. Kung has taken some time out of Remco Evenepoel. Is this going to be the first world title for Stefan Kung? Third fastest for Remco Evenepoel, 15.5 seconds slower. But don't forget, in the women's race, riders took time on the run-in. Simon, this rider, Stefan Kung, is leaving no stone unturned in a search for the rainbows.
No, Stefan Kung is all out at this point in time. He will be getting updates over his race radio, communicating the fact that he is up. He's going the fastest on the course. We haven't seen Filippo Ganna go through that final time check as yet, but Stefan Kung is shaping up to be the fastest rider to the line and take that place in the hot seat.
So often this rider has finished third, fourth, been disappointed. We've seen him devastated with some of the rides when he feels like he's been all out and it hasn't quite happened. Is Stefan Kung going to take the world title here in Wollongong? It's Filippo Ganna who's now heading towards this intermediate split. He's the last rider to reach the top of Dumfries Avenue, and then he will turn downhill back towards the beaches to try and win this title. Ganna's time, as it ticks away, it looks like he's running out of time.
He's already behind Stefan Kung. He's a long way down on Stefan Kung at this point in time.
In actual fact, this rider might not even see a medal. Here's the arrival of Mikael Bjerg. Bjerg finishes with the 8th fastest time. Here comes Filippo Ganna to the intermediate split. That's been a very hard climb for Filippo Ganna. The Italian powerhouse here in Wollongong is being left wanted by the climbs and the technicality of this course. Ghana goes through, and it looks like the 5th fastest time at the splits.
Filippo Ghana is not going to take a 3rd world time trial title today. Stefan Kung is the fastest rider out there right now. He was the fastest at the final intermediate time check, and he's looking really good in this final section of the day.
Here's the intermediate time splits. It's Stefan Kung who leads, Tobias Foss in 2nd for Norway, Remco Evenepoel in 3rd. The only rider who's finished is Tobias Foss, and he now waits. Deep breaths. What's going to happen on the run-in?
This would be a very anxious wait for Tobias Foss here. He's looking down on these times at the intermediate time check and counting down the seconds until Stefan Kung comes around.
He looks like he's in more pain right now in the hot seat than he was when he was out riding. This is anxious moments for the Norwegian rider. Can he pull this off? Back out on the course. Stefan Kung. Look at the metronomic power of this rider. This rider is on supreme form today, there's no doubt. He has had one of those days when everything's gone right so far.
He is having the perfect day today. Only around 4 minutes of racing left here for Stefan Kung. He still looks smooth on his bike, still very solid through his shoulders, head nice and low, extremely concentrated.
That's such a hard position to maintain, isn't it? Look at that, the head is not even moving a centimetre. The arrival of Remy Cavagna. The Frenchman is not going to be in the medals. Tobias Foss is going to stay in the hot seat. In 2nd place, Bissiger. In 3rd place is Nelson Oliveira. That is scheduled to change in the next few minutes. Cavagna's never really been in the reckoning so far on today's individual time trial. Just looks a little tired, maybe, after La Vuelta. Perhaps he's been left wanting after that.
Yeah, he did a huge amount of work in the Vuelta a España in support of Remco Evenepoel. It looks as though he just hasn't recovered sufficiently for this time trial, crossing the line in 6th place.
1 minute and 14 off the pace. Still a great ride after a
Get yourself set for the run-in now. This rider's 2,700 metres from a dream scenario. At the intermediate split, the only rider potentially who can take this title away is Remco Evenepoel, who's only 15.5 seconds down. And do not be surprised if Evenepoel can take back somewhere close to that sort of distance. This rider's pretty devastated, I think. Ethan Hayter, who was in the ballpark and had a bike change. Heading up now to the finish, and he's still very, very close to the time of Tobias Foss. Did that bike change cost him the hot seat? 2nd fastest for Ethan Hayter.
Well, he's crossed the line around 40 seconds down from Tobias Foss. Whereas you look back at the intermediate time check, I think he finished the time, he went through the final intermediate time check at 43 seconds down. So he's done a faster final split than Foss.
Foss is watching. Hayter has finished. There's only 5 riders left now who can take this title away. Kung leans the bike right-hander flat out through that turn. This is a scintillating ride by the Swiss rider. Slightly uphill now, Simon, but it doesn't look like it, does it?
You can see here that Stefan Kung is still riding a nice high cadence, so still turning his legs at a very high speed, going over this final little rise. It drops down here quite quickly now, just to a few 100 meters to go.
Back out on the course with Tadej Pogačar as he flows his way back towards the beach at Wollongong. 55 kilometers an hour. (1,000 meters). Is this a date with the rainbow jersey in about a minute's time? Stefan Kung, the time to beat. at the finish line is 40 minutes 2.78. This is looking a little bit tight.
This is going to be extremely tight. 700 metres to go. Stefan Kung here going at 70 kilometres an hour. He has 32 seconds to finish.
This is going to be a nail-biter for Tobias Foss. It looked like it was a done deal at the intermediate split. Now it may not be, because Stefan Kung is gliding his way in towards the finish, but it's not there yet. It's ticking down the time to beat, 40 minutes 2.78. Tobias Foss has ridden some final phase of this time trial. What is the time going to be of the Swiss rider? Is Stefan Kung going to go into the hot seat? Is it going to go to Tobias Foss? On the line it goes red. Tobias Foss stays in the hot seat. Wow, 2.95 down. Tobias Foss may well be a surprise world champion. Stefan Kung has lost 13 seconds to Tobias Foss in the final phase from the top of that climb.
Stefan Kung there, he will be devastated. He did everything he could in that individual time trial. He gave himself every opportunity. Fastest at the final time check, but he faded in that last sector, losing 13 seconds to Foss.
What a finish this is. This is absolutely incredible. It looked like the title was on its way to Switzerland. Tobias Foss might well be about to take a world title that I think very few people expected. The only person I heard say Tobias Foss might do something was you yesterday night at dinner.
Well, I said he might do something. I wasn't anticipating him to go out and beat the absolute specialist at individual time trialling, but he's done that so far.
Here comes Tadej Pogačar. There are only 3 riders left to finish. Tobias Foss, the 25-year-old Norwegian, winner of the Tour de l'Avenir in 2019, another rider who's done that. Tadej Pogačar. Pogačar heading into the finish. This is going to be a good ride by the double Tour de France winner. Pogačar comes in to conclude this time trial. He's taken a little bit of time back on the run-in. Who knew that that run-in was so important? That there was the possibility of the tables turning and times changing. Tadej Pogačar reaches the finish line. What is it going to be for the Slovenian rider as he heads into World Championship weekend next weekend with the hopes of winning the road title? Pogačar reaches the line now, 5th fastest time. Only 2 riders left to finish.
A solid performance there by Tadej Pogačar. Such a complete rider, no time trials, he's not a time trial specialist.
Only 2 riders can take this world title away from the 25-year-old Norwegian. Here comes Remco Evenepoel. Can he add La Vuelta to a world title here? Evenepoel is in the finish area, but the time is also running out. 40 minutes 2.78 is the time to beat, and it goes red. Tobias Foss stays in the hot seat. Evenepoel is closing in, and Evenepoel goes 3rd fastest. Only 9.16 down. Look at the face of Tobias Foss. It could be his. There's only one rider who can take it away.
There's only one rider left on the parkour who was significantly down at the intermediate time check. This is looking very good for Tobias Foss, and it looks as though the reality is starting to sink in.
What a finish we are having to this afternoon of time trialling. You know, sometimes world titles just do not go to the plan. And this afternoon is one of those. The rider from Jumbo-Visma, look at his face. He can't, yeah, wake up, Tobias. This is something pretty special. Here's Filippo Ganna. 1,200 meters to go, and the time is going to go by as he reaches the banner across the road, the time of Tobias Foss is going to go past.
Well, Tobias Foss's time of 40 minutes and 2 seconds has just about passed, with 1 kilometre remaining for the former world time trial champion Filippo Ganna.
Filippo Ganna has not had a day to remember here in Wollongong, but one young rider has just had a dream come true. Tobias Foss is the world champion of the individual time trial. Filippo Ganna may well not even get a medal here in Australia. As he rides into the conclusion of this time trial, Filippo Ganna for the last 2 years has absolutely dominated the World Championships. He took the title in 2020, he won it in 2021. When this course was looked at, first of all, everyone said, no, it's not Ganna's. And then yesterday, everyone started to say, it's Filippo Ganna's course. It's proven to be the undoing of the Italian. Filippo Ganna rides in and is going to be way, way down. 7th place for the defending champion. The world title goes to the Norwegian Tobias Foss, the winner of the Tour de l'Avenir, in the top 10 of the Giro d'Italia. And yes, that's absolutely right. Wow, mind blown.
Well, I don't think anybody expected that result, Tobias Foss included. You look at him there, he cannot believe what he has just achieved.
What an incredible day. But the story, Simon, from the top of that climb is the story to tell. Because he went through that intermediate split, 11.5 seconds down on Stefan Kung. And Stefan Kung looked like he was absolutely on the limit through every single corner. And by the finish, Tobias Foss had taken 14.5 seconds out of a rider who was on the absolute limit.
Well, he's taken around 1 kilometre per second, 1 second per kilometre out of Stefan Kung between the final intermediate time check and the finish line.
What a special day for the young Norwegian. Look at Remco Evenepoel. Maybe one race too many for Remco. He gets the bronze medal.
Well, another podium finish.
You can't expect a rider so young to have taken the demands mentally of the welter and then come here and win straight away. I think when he looks back on this, it would be a pretty great performance. But look at this. Tobias Foss of Norway wins. 2.95 seconds ahead of Stefan Kung and 9.16 ahead of Remco Evenepoel. A rider who will rue today is Ethan Hayter. 39.95 seconds down. And you said that will have cost him at least 30 seconds, the bike change. There's your top 10.
Well, disappointing day there for Ethan Hayter to have that mechanical issue and a bike change and finish just outside the medals. But Stefan Bissinger, also a solid performance. Tadej Pogacar in 6th place. A non-time trialling specialist. That's great. Filippo Ganna, he'll be disappointed with 7th place.
You know, there's so many titles, isn't there? So many days in racing when things are a bit predictable. But World Championships rarely are. And we've started off, and I hope this continues for the whole week, with complete unpredictability in the Men's Elite time trial.
Well, Tobias Foss was definitely, an outsider for today's individual time trial. Here we have a recap of his race. You can see how aggressively he attacked the start here. He took off with a win in mind.
We've seen that he's ridden a Grand Tour this year. He rode the Giro d'Italia. He's finished 8th in the final time trial in Verona. It showed that he came out of a Grand Tour strong, and then he won the Norwegian Time Trial Championships. And since then, he's really had quite a quiet time. He rode the Deutschland Tour and 2 races in Canada. So the legs are fresh, he's mentally fresh. That might have helped.
Well, it might have also helped, but it would have definitely helped him and enabled him to do a really specific preparation for this individual time trial. So unlike a number of his big rivals here, he would have been spending a lot of time on his time trial bike and really training and honing his position, honing those efforts in specifically for this time trial today.
Tobias Foss is the world time trial champion. He's going to pull on those rainbow bands shortly. I can't wait to hear the interview. Look at the face when he realised. It is like a dream. He was part of the UNOX development team. He was signed by Jumbo-Visma in 2020, and he has a contract with them till the end of 2023. He's certainly a rider who has been signed as a future major star. Let's hear now from Tobias Foss, the winner of the World Championship.
Well, my first question is very simple, Tobias. What's going on in your mind right now? You're a world champion.
It really feels like I'm in some kind of dream. It's I don't believe it, and it's so unreal. Yeah, I got the signals during the ride that my legs are really good, and yeah, coming from Canada, I was confident my shape was good. But man, this is more than I can ever dream for. So it's I will really try to enjoy it, but first I have to realize it, I think.
Yeah, because when you were sitting on that hot seat, and after your performance, when you crossed the line, you knew you'd managed something huge?
No, I wouldn't say I'm maybe the guy with the greatest confidence, so I really don't believe it until it's over, but I really felt like I got out everything I could today, and I did really my best, so and I gave it, I couldn't do anything better, so then in the end I have to be satisfied, and then the other guys have to do their race, but man, this is unbelievable.
Can you talk about your efforts? How did you pace yourself? I mean, it was flat out all the time, and was it a course that suited you?
Yeah, I would say so. I think there was no actually real time to rest or to put down the power, but was really like an on and off course, and you had to be really technical and push through the corners. So yeah, it was really all about using the terrain and going hard where the gradients are a bit steeper, and then slacking up a bit and having a breath where it goes faster. So yeah, I had really good coaching, and we prepared really well. So it was a perfect executed race.
In just a few moments, you're going to wear the rainbow jerseys. You're going to wear that jersey for a year.
Congratulations! Thank you.
Stefan Kung. What does it mean? What does it mean for you to have that rainbow jersey?
Yeah, like I said, if I were top 10 today, I would be really, really satisfied, and even top 5 I was hoping for. So to wear that jersey will be really, really special, and yeah, I will try to honor it as good as I can, but I will for sure enjoy it as much as possible.
It's going to be a special moment on that podium.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
For sure. Yeah.
Thanks, Thomas. Thank you very much.
He hasn't realised it yet, has he?
No, he definitely hasn't realised it yet, but you can see he's such a humble guy as well. As he identified there, he was aiming for a top 10, maybe a top 5 would have been a great result. So to win this world title is really beyond his wildest dreams, I imagine.
Here's the story of the splits. Kung went through 2.26 faster than him at split 1. Then at split 2, he was 9.27 seconds faster. And at split 3, yeah, it was just starting to turn the tables, wasn't it? Look at that, 14.48 seconds. So that's split 2 to the finish. He took 14.48 seconds out of Stefan Kung on the running.
Yeah, Tobias Foss there was incredible throughout. He's so consistent throughout that time trial, but he really brought it home strong. And Stefan Kung, you know, when you look at those first intermediate time checks, he looked like he was really set to take this world title, but he just faded in that last sector.
It's incredible when you watch it that we were saying that Kung was holding that head so straight, everything seemed to be flowing. It's stunning to understand how a time trialist can find extra speed in places and just take back, as you said, a second every single kilometre from the top of that climb to the finish.
Well, it does sound like Tobias Foss, he was really calculated in his approach today. He worked out where he needed to push really hard and where he could back off and just recover a little bit throughout the course. And that allowed him still to have the energy to accelerate in that final sector.
Here's some shots of Tobias Foss, who's the new world champion of the time trial, as he made his way into the conclusion of his ride today. 34.2 kilometres, a short time trial, but certainly one that gave us plenty to talk about on the run-in. All that hard work, all those hours of preparation suddenly pay off. We're waiting then for the presentation. Tobias Foss will be crowned the new world champion.
Well, Norwegian cycling is really going from strength to strength as well. When you look at the current crop of riders coming through and the fact that they have their own professional team these days in Uno X, it is developing the young talent. But when you look through the list of the riders that will be lining up in the road race next weekend, that includes Tobias Foss. It also includes the experienced rider in the squad, Alexander Kristoff. Sven-Erik Bistrom in there as well. Andreas Lekkensen, who we saw earlier today. So such a strong group of riders coming through for Norway.
Since 1994, Norway have never stood on the podium of the individual time trial. What a day for Norway. What a day for Tobias Foss. He's the first ever medalist for his nation. A huge surprise, I think, for many people, but not so much even for himself. The 12th nation to take a world title. Pretty incredible to think that since 1994, no Norwegian rider has been on the podium of the individual time trial for Norway.
Well, they've had performances in the road race. It was the last time the World Championships were in Australia, finishing in Geelong, where Thor Hushovd won the road race at the World Championships. So they're no stranger to big results in the world titles, but time trialling has never really been their forte in the elite ranks.
Here's confirmation of the result again to just let you digest our top 10. Ethan Hayter having a bike change. Magnus Sheffield is a rider who I wonder what happened to him. 17th, 144 down. And there's the rundown of all the riders who took part in today's individual time trial. Daniel Bonello, the Maltese rider there, who was the first rider off. And his compatriot, Alex Smythe there. 7 minutes down.
Certainly a spectacular day here in Wollongong. The sun was shining, there was a light breeze throughout the day. Perfect for these helicopter shots.
It is. Incredible the way that the weather changes here, though. It goes from bright sunshine to then the light drops, and it's still a bit chilly at this time of day here in Wollongong, but during the day it's very warm indeed. We're waiting for the podium presentation for Norway, for Tobias Foss. Stefan Kung again, I think, is going to go away and just have to think, where did I lose that time? Just so close to a world title again.
That will be a devastating result for Stefan Kung. Second in the world titles is nothing to be ashamed of, but he looked like he was set to take the victory today.
Just by the way he was riding, the way that we saw him go through that intermediate time split, everything looked like it was set up for Switzerland to take the world title. Norwegian fans are ready. It's a great atmosphere at the World Championships. It's so cosmopolitan. We're going to enjoy that over the coming days.
Mesdames et messieurs, bienvenue à la cérémonie protocolaire des championnats du monde route UCI 2022 à Wollongong.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the awards ceremony of the 2022 UCI Road World Championships here in Wollongong.
And now the presentation of the men's individual time trial.
Cérémonie protocolaire des championnats du monde route UCI 2022 contre la montre individuelle homme élite.
The award ceremony of the UCI Road World Championships for the Men Elite individual time trial.
Les médailles et le maillot seront présentés par Madame Katharina Nash, vice-présidente de l'UCI.
The medals and jersey will be presented by Mrs. Katharina Nash, the UCI Vice President.
À la troisième place et vainqueur de la médaille de bronze représentant la Belgique.
Women cyclocross and mountain bike riders.
Of the bronze medal representing Belgium, Remco Evenepoel.
Remco Evenepoel finishes on the podium in the bronze medal position. He looks like he doesn't know what to think about this. He's got used to winning and he takes the bronze medal this time.
À la deuxième place et vainqueur de la médaille d'argent représentant la Suisse.
In second place and winner of the silver medal representing Switzerland, Stefan Kung.
He's clearly on exceptional form. Stefan Kung takes the silver medal.
À la première place, champion du monde
He's
et
getting
gagnant de
closer.
la médaille
He's
d'or
taken the bronze medal before.
représentant la Norvège.
In first place, new world champion and winner of the UCI gold medal representing Norway, Tobias Foss.
The first ever Norwegian world champion of the individual time trial for men. Tobias Foss pulls on the rainbow bands. He'll wear those next season in every individual time trial he rides. What a day. That's pretty special, isn't it?
Oh, that's extremely special. Obviously a day that Tobias Foss will remember
the
forever.
chair of Wollongong 2022 organising committee.
He beats the winner of La Vuelta. He beats Stefan Kung, one of the race favourites.
La montre Tissot sera présentée par Madame Catherine Nash, vice-présidente de
And a
l'UCI.
special presentation
And
from
the Tissot
Tissot,
watch
as
will be
always.
presented by Mrs. Katerina Nash, the UCI Vice President.
Et maintenant,
And
mesdames
now
et
for the
messieurs,
national anthem of
en
Norway.
l'honneur de notre nouveau champion du monde, nous vous présentons l'hymne national de la Norvège.
Ladies and gentlemen, in honor of our new world champion, we present the national anthem of Norway.
The national anthem of Norway, Tobias Foss takes the victory here in Wollongong.
Today, the gold medal, the new world champion, Tobias Foss, the silver medal, Stefan Kuhl, and the bronze medalist,
A podium of a really inspiring race this afternoon. There's going to be some disappointment within some of these riders, but certainly from a fan's perspective, that was something really different and quite special.
That was a super exciting time trial. I think Remco Evenepoel and Stefan Kung, that's kind of bittersweet results for both of those guys because they would have been dreaming of that rainbow jersey. However, Tobias Foss, and such an outsider, for him to upset and take the title in front of those big favourites, what a fantastic day.
It is always special to see something like that happen. He'll sign the jersey as always.
Just do one looking at me and smiling.
The photos will be done, then he's got the press conferences to do. That's his signature to the jersey. And now the demands of a new world champion as he deals with all the press and everything else that goes with it. Well, we're going to look ahead to the races coming up. We've got a full programme of racing every day apart from Thursday, where the day is where we have transition day, where the riders go from the time trials to the road races, and therefore the racing is the course is open for everyone to train. Tomorrow we're going to have the under-23 men's individual time trial. We'll follow that up on Tuesday with the juniors. So there's confirmation that tomorrow men's under-23 individual time trial. Join us for that. From me, Anthony McCrossan, and alongside me, Simon Gerrans. Thanks for joining us for day one of competition. Of course, also with Rochelle Gilmore. We're going to be back tomorrow for more racing. Enjoy your evenings, enjoy your days wherever you are, and we'll be back with more racing tomorrow from Wollongong here in Illawarra in New South Wales. Bye for now.